Working on some projects?
Yeah, helping, Larry, yeah, architect here in town. Doing a little project for him, so I made time for that because a friend of, kind of mutual friend of ours, referred me to him. Okay, I guess I'll do it, so it's going good though. So yeah, we got a lot of stuff done there today.
Good to have work.
Yeah.
Good to have work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, sometimes I find myself complaining, God, I'm so busy. But it's like, better than the alternative, So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So you're going there
No doubt about that.
You guys have a nice dinner last night?
to the meeting?
We did.
Good. Yeah, us too.
Seemed like we didn't
So you can see us?
hang out as much as some of our other friends were there.
Yeah.
We got there after you
Yeah,
were
turn your volume.
eating and left. You were still there. I'm going, oh, the guys are having a good time there.
But yeah, we sat there and I was like, I wish I had this like
So
on
you
a,
can-
like on a camera where we could just like speed forward it.
You can hear James and John talk?
Quiet, and then all of a
All
sudden
right.
it came like
Good.
just packed, and then you got down like everybody's gone and was still there. It was like
Where were you guys?
Jalisco, first thing for tomorrow. Over to Jalisco. So yeah.
I kept hearing these loud noises, on the tables.
Yeah, it's giving those shots out. Yeah. I had the first one, and then Bridget didn't want hers. Like, yeah, just have that. And I'm like, no, one of those in a lifetime is good enough for me. It's good.
Once a year.
Right. I'll start breaking out in handcuffs and orange suits if I drink too many of those. How you doing, Darrell?
All right.
Ready? No, Mel's not here.
What's this
Ed,
one?
is Bruce coming today? Okay.
Sorry to run in. It's kind of-
We don't have
Oh, good, good.
microphones tonight, so we're gonna have to talk up a little louder.
Got a light.
Audience, but the microphones are put into the video so that these people who are watching online
Sort of here.
can say, yeah. Otherwise, we really have to speak up loud. Emily, are you ready?
Mm-hmm. It's quiet tonight.
Not what I expected.
Well, I'm gonna start. Okay.
Great.
This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. Roll call, please.
Chairman Bennett,
Present?
Commissioner Hoagland,
Present.
Commissioner Reddington,
Here.
Commissioner Stern,
Here.
Commissioner Friedman.
We'll now have a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. First action on the agenda is consent items. Do I hear a motion for approving consent items?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the consent item.
Motion by Stern,
I'll second.
second by Hoagland. Roll call.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
Motion passes. We do have one proclamation tonight. Proclamation for Municipal Clerks Week, May 4th to 10th, 2014. Whereas the office of the municipal clerks, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the municipal clerks is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the municipal clerks provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies and agencies of government, at other levels, and whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, whereas the municipal clerks serve as the information center on functions of local government and community, whereas municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerks through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, county, and international professional organizations, whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the municipal clerk. Now, therefore, I, James Bennett, Chairman of the Commission of the City of Livingston, do recognize the week of May 4th to May 10th, 2014 as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent, dated the 6th day of May 2014. There are no scheduled public comments tonight. There's no public hearings, no ordinance, but we do have 5 resolutions. We do have the first resolution is resolution number 4454, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, of its intent to annex by petition of James W. Sievers certain land which is contiguous to the City of Livingston and described as parcels 4 and 5 of Section 4, Township 2, South, Range 10 East, Certificate of Survey 564 in Park County, Montana. Mr. Meese.
Mr. Chair, just a little bit of an introduction, and I'm going to ask Mr. Woodhull to come up to the table and fill in any gaps for me as we go along. Emily, could you pull up the aerial picture that we have? Good, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to approach the screen. So the 2 tracts of land that are before the City Commission for annexation are the 2 that are found inside the blue line. You see over here this shading on these parcels here. This is the Yellowstone Preserve parcels. That shading is there to show you how these pieces of property are contiguous to the city. For the purposes of annexation, the road doesn't count. Okay? If you look at the same, you can see that same depiction out here on a little bit bigger property that we're talking about right here to the east of Business Park Road, if you will, basically, and it's directly contiguous but separated by the road to the Yellowstone Preserve property. The dark blue right here would be what we call a Watson annexation, and that is predominantly in zone LIP, correct?
Light industrial.
Light industrial. Over in here we have residential, low density residential, some high density residential. And then this little piece in the lighter blue color here is Central Business District, and that was all done again in the Yellowstone planning process for the Yellowstone. So obviously tonight's not about zoning, it's simply the first step in the process for annexation. It's the administration's understanding that Mr. Seaver has a potential buyer for his property, that the intentions at the moment are some type of truck stop / fueling station, potentially some mechanical repair bays, those types of activities that you would find. And then somewhere located on one of those 2 pieces would be a sign in view of the interstate for the purpose of letting folks know that they're there and drawing them off the interstate. If these properties are annexed into the city, that sign will most likely require an application before the Board of Adjustments. We can't take an application to the Board of Adjustments, though, if it's not within the jurisdiction. So there's a process that this needs to work through if the city is interested in annexing these two pieces of property. If the city commission were to vote to the affirmative this evening, what you have done is moved this issue to the June 3rd meeting, at which there would be a subsequent public hearing and a vote that evening as well. So tonight is not final action on this particular issue. I guess I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, and entertain any questions.
Okay. All right. So, Jim, do you have anything to add to that?
No, but I'd be glad to answer questions.
Okay. All right. So we can either start with some discussion, but I'd prefer starting with a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve resolution 4454.
Okay. Motion by Stern,
I'll second that.
second by Reddington. Commission discussion.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
As far as the signage, is that to do with height restrictions as far as the city? Is that what we're talking about? Is the signage?
Yes, it would actually have to do with both height restrictions and a backlit restriction. Is that correct, Jim?
There is an overlay zone, this being a gateway area. We have several of those on the interstate off-ramps, and the signage restrictions are more strict than they are generally. Those regulations, the height is the same citywide, but in this particular area, newly annexed property is required to have no backlit signs under our current ordinance. In order to have a backlit sign, which at this point is conjecture that they would want one, would require a variance application and approval through the Board of Adjustment.
Okay, thank you.
So the last time, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time the city engaged that type of application, and again, we're just guessing at this point, but in terms of the last application, that was McDonald's.
As far as a major sign variance,
Right.
yes.
And the McDonald's sign is 110 feet.
It's in that range, 90-some feet to 110 right in there.
But there's a different geographical or
Right, and they have to make a case for why that would be necessary, obviously.
If I understand, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have further questions?
No, that's good.
Any other commissioners have any other questions? Okay, Commissioner Smith?
You go ahead.
Oh, okay. My understanding was that the McDonald's sign was grandfathered after the ordinance was put in. Is that correct?
It was granted a variance within the city.
Was it granted the variance, so it wasn't there before the ordinance? When was this ordinance established, do you remember?
Well, the gateway ordinance I'm speaking of was not nearly that old.
Okay,
It was in the
2006.
2006, I believe.
okay,
But we've had sign regulations all along. And
right.
of course, the height limit has never been that high, so. it required
Okay,
a
so
variance.
there was a variance, okay. All right, and so the process here that we're going through is, first of all, this is an initial affirmative of this particular resolution, but then it's going to come back for a public hearing. Is there any other process that this needs to go through besides those two meetings?
As far as annexation, no. That would get us through the annexation process. Then once we finish the annexation process, I think we have so many days to get it zoned, don't we, Jim?
60.
60 days to come back and actually zone the property. And obviously, until it's within the city, if there were going to be a request to the Board of Adjustments, it can't happen until it's within the city's jurisdiction. So those two steps, if there was to be a sign request, would have to happen post-annexation.
Okay. So the annexation is with the idea that Mr. Severs has a potential buyer that needs to be within the city limits in order for the buyer to proceed. Is that an incorrect assumption?
It doesn't have to be necessarily within the city limits for the development to proceed. They could do their development within Park County. And as most folks know, Park County doesn't have established zoning. So they could pretty much do a lot of what they want to do if they kept it in the county. Their interest in bringing it into the city is primarily for the purpose of connecting to public utilities. If they weren't inside the city, then they would have to provide on-site water and septic sufficient to their needs for that
Right.
particular site.
So in the case, let's say, I'm just making some scenarios here because we're annexing it or potential annexing this property based on the idea that the property owner wants to sell it to someone, and then eventually that someone wants to be tapped in the city services. So this makes the property a little more valuable for them. In the case that it does get annexed, if it went that far, and then the potential business decided not to go forward, would it remain annexed?
Mhm.
Or is there any reason for the property owner to just say, can I get unannexed?
Absolutely. The answer to your question is yes. Once we've put it within inside the city boundaries, it's in.
Right.
There is a process by statute for de-annexation. That can be requested at the part of the property owner, and or the city can actually initiate that as well. So it's possible to de-annex it at that point.
As far as obviously when we bring more property in the city, there's some tax value to that property for the city. Is it equal to what the county would be experiencing as loss? Or is there a difference in our calculations for property values?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're asking, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we're gonna realize if this gets annexed, we're gonna realize an additional tax base for that property. Is that property tax for the city more or less than what the county is receiving at this point?
That question I can't answer because I don't know what the value of the property will be in the assessment. But remember that if they come into the city, they will continue to pay county property taxes. So they'll pay county property taxes and city property taxes based on the value of the structure and the land after the development. Right now, I would suppose they're probably getting agricultural property tax rate on that, Jim?
Most likely, which is not a lot of property tax. So pre-development, the city's property tax increase would be fairly small.
Mm-hmm. Did that answer your question?
Yes,
Mr. Chair?
yeah, it did. Thank you very much. All right, so Jim, do you know how many acres this is?
I was just gonna ask.
40 acres.
40.
Okay. You ready?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Just some clarifications on the process. This is the resolution of intent. Looking at the state law for annexation, it said two public hearings separated by significant span of time. Do we need to have two public hearings after this resolution intent, or one public hearing and stuff?
My understanding is that tonight's meeting, 30 days separation, and the second meeting, and we're finished. And that's my understanding of it. I mean, I'm sure if Mr. Becker were here, he could give us a definitive answer, but that's my understanding.
Double check out. All right. All right. So presumably, though, then the public hearing is the chance to get all the public comment for all the issues to be raised up. The resolution of intent is to bring the process out in the public. So then after that, you said the zoning has to be done in 60 days. That'll go to the planning board, I assume, for recommendation.
Acting as the zoning commission.
And chances are that would be, the recommendation is going to be light industrial.
They have an opportunity to request what they would like. It would either be that or highway commercial would be my
Right. Are truck stops, are they even in the zone table?
They're gas stations.
We'll have to revisit that as well. All right. And then after the zoning process, all right, well, then we'll deal with the signage. If they have to get a variance, and I would hope, I mean, I don't know the company, and this will require some communication, but if there's a chance that we could work with them in some sort of partnership way to, I don't know, you know, they're gonna want a sign, they're gonna need it for the business. They're not gonna be able to match our design guidelines, which are quite restrictive, but maybe they can meet us halfway and help us out, in particular, help us out with some of the developing, just helping ensure that some of the development and intervening space is done responsibly.
So,
I guess that's more of a philosophical standpoint than anything.
I don't know that they won't be able to meet our design guidelines. They have built facilities, in my understanding, all over the West and the United States, and they've had a chance to review those guidelines. I think if I'm stating correctly, Jim, they felt like that there wasn't anything so onerous in there that they wouldn't be able to work with us.
The architectural stuff, they were very comfortable.
The single item which caused them the greatest concern was the sign, both from a lighting standpoint and from a height standpoint, to make sure it was at a proper elevation so that people could see they were there. But in terms of the architectural standards, they did not, I mean, they're more than willing to work with us and provided some examples of, not by location, I mean, not by name, but of different places where they've done that in the past in other communities. They're comfortable with that.
Good. So we'll just have to see how the conversation with the signs go.
You're right, that would be before the Board of Adjustments, correct.
After it goes to the Board of Adjustments, does it come back to the commission, or the Board of Adjustments is a binding?
Board of
decision?
Adjustments makes its own decisions. The City Commission changed that in 2007, I believe.
And the commission has oversight by appointment of the members of the Board of Adjustments.
Correct.
Right. You mentioned if this actually proceeds and they then request the infrastructure get hooked up. What's the process for that? Because certainly there's going to be some technical obstacles that need to be overcome as well, right?
A few, but I'm going to go back up to the
Screen, Shannon, you correct me if I'm wrong. So basically, the plan is, the plan is that we will, they will most likely bring a public water line from the spot that it's going to get in for the hospital. So if you think about that, they'll bring a public water line from there all the way to their front, which means that we've now extended the utility, basically the whole length of Watson Annexation. And then across the front of the small business park here in the right of way, and then that public line will terminate at their park. Is that right? Yes. The plan at this point, in just initial conversations, they would also extend a public sewer line from the lift station that the hospital has to build, again, across the frontage of the Watson property. That line will terminate right at the corner of Smoothie Road. That's public. And they will make they'll make a private connection from their property in the state right away and connecting here, which will go down to the location. So, as a result of this development, what they will be doing, they will be providing public infrastructure for the length of the Watson Annexation side of the track. That will make it possible for folks that might be developing in this LIC at that line access. But we haven't gotten this far, but I would expect they'll probably ask us for a reimbursement agreement, just like we've done with other developments,
where if someone taps either one of those lines, then they have to pay a per capita share back, a prorated share back.
Looping considerations with the line that length.
Well, this won't loop it.
Right, so
This just extends the line.
significant infrastructure obstacle that needs to be?
You don't think it's a significant infrastructure obstacle? I'll let Shannon talk about this because of this development. I think it is something that we've identified and discussed before, that an eventual, either an additional public well on the Watson property or some other well in that area to be able to create a loop for the system would certainly be of value. That's why I think it's in the PER. In our drinking water PER, that's a special area of emphasis, that whole east end from the bridge over to try and create that. So I don't think this development creates that issue, but that issue is certainly on the board that eventually there needs to be a loop system.
That's in the current drinking water PER? What are they saying about it? Do the same considerations hold for the sewer line? Why is that? We don't want to deliver that, sir. Good. I wanted to clarify the process. I think we should check to see if there's two additional. State law looked like there was two public hearings that will be required. And then the zoning, I think, will be where there's a considerable discussion. Oh, and the last part is the annexation policy. The current annexation policy does not encompass this annexation. But I don't think that this, I mean, my personal viewpoint is that annexation policy should not hold this up. We should actually direct the planning board, or the planning board should take it under advisement to go update the annexation policy, which was developed for some of the old annexations that happened. In light of what's going on now, the annexation policy needs to be revisited and updated. And so I think that's incumbent upon the planning board to do that, for the commission to be aware of that. With that, I yield. I don't know if the administration wants to talk about all about the annexation policy. We'll have plenty of time to do that at planning board.
Actually, that policy, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
that policy was updated about the time we did the guidelines for the gateways. And it may not specifically call out this property, but it does go out further than the document that the planning board has seen recently. The change, we amended the growth policy and the zoning to recognize these further potentials.
Well, we could take this offline, but there's this map right here on the annexation policy that I was referring to. You're saying it goes beyond that?
Well, by virtue of the maps for the gateway areas are extended beyond those.
All right. Well, let's take this to the planning board. I yield.
Are you done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any other commission thoughts, comments, or questions?
I have something.
Okay.
This is, Ed, I think maybe for you, just in a general way, can you describe pros and cons of annexation for me?
Of annexation in general?
Yeah, and just in general to the city, to, or it could be in this situation, but I'd say generally, probably
Sure.
easier.
Okay. So, trying to think where to start.
Start with the pros.
Yeah, yeah.
Then with the
Be
cons.
positive first.
Yeah.
So, generally, and I think in this case, one of the things that annexation does is makes sure that development occurs within the area most able to provide the necessary services. And so in this case, that means a couple of things. It means that we can get this development done with utilities, public utilities, water and sewer, as opposed to on-site water and sewer systems, which have their own pros and cons. In this case, the extension of those utilities opens up other already annexed land for for new development because it moves those utilities farther down the road. I would argue, because I'm a control freak, that the fact that once this comes into the city now has more control over what's going on property that is directly a part of our gateways. That was one of the things that we discussed significantly with the Jessen annexation, that we were very interested in having control over the types of development that go on our gateway. So I think that's another argument for this particular piece. Obviously, a con is we pick up more ground to which we have to provide services, whether that's utilities, police, fire, those types of things. The way that we work, though, with Park World Fire, we're going to be providing services out there anyways, with our automatic aid agreements, the way we support each other. The way that we work with Park County Sheriff's Office, we're going to be providing services out there anyways. So the pro is that if we're going to be providing those services, this creates a tax base to help us meet the cost of providing those services. A commercial annexing and developing commercial property into the city presents a net larger gain in terms of revenue than your typical residential development does when you look at the difference between cost of service and the amount of property tax dollars that any single property is generating. So, you know, I would look at that as a pro as well. I suppose an argument can be made that if a community annexes simply for the purpose of annexation, there is a term out there called urban sprawl, where you are in effect creating new urban and suburban areas, and you are extending public services and utilities beyond what may be their effective capabilities. I said it in 2006 and I'll say it today: if you're not growing, you're dying. So I think annexation is a way that cities grow. I've always been a big supporter of infill development, but I also think you need new property as well. In the last 8 years, we have actually added commercial development property to the city of Livingston. Before that time, we had very little property in which we could do new commercial development, especially light industrial. And so in this particular situation, whether this truck stop is LIP or highway commercial, it's obviously not, it's not going to, you're not going to have a technology company more than likely locate there because it's at an off-ramp, which is probably best designed. But it can be, I think in this case, an anchor location with the hospital that helps push development in that particular area. I have a hard time kind of coming up with cons on this particular one. I think if you're not going to put a truck stop on a piece of property like that off a major interstate that goes from Seattle to Chicago, I don't know where you're going to put one. I think this particular location provides one more thing, and that's a left-hand turn. One of the things that I've heard since I've been in Livingston, since I came in '06, is we need a reason for folks to get off and turn and come into town. The criticism is they get off at 333. 333. Stop at McDonald's, stop at Town Pump, take a left, and go to the park. And how do we get them to take a right and come into town? Well, the beauty here is if they get off, if they make that choice, they can come out, take a left, and go right through town and never get back on the interstate to get to Yellowstone. Doesn't mean that they will, but it certainly provides an opportunity for that to happen. And so properly signed and properly marketed, working with the tourism, the chamber and other folks, it just provides us an extra opportunity to say, hey, you can take a left and be the same place you're going in about the same amount of time and pass through historic Livingston. So is that adequate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Further discussion from the commission? Other thoughts? there any public comment tonight? I also wanted to mention that we're having troubles with our microphones tonight. So I'm asking the commission to talk louder because it's going from here into there. But the only record we're taking of this is with these little microphones over here. That is our public record. So if we can all speak up and make sure that we don't get too soft in our words. And also, I know this is not commission protocol, but I'd like to recognize two former commissioners are here tonight, Rick Van Aken and Vicki Blakeman. I want to thank you for your service and your years and dedication to the city of Livingston. So saw you there, so I'll give you some recognition. So is there any public comment regarding this subject? And of course, Vicki, you notice, state your name and address for the record.
Vicki Blakeman, 914 East Calendar. I just have a couple questions. I think this is a fairly inevitable development given where we are. And I can't remember if we annexed the road already. Because when we went to the west, we had to annex the road and then annex the property. Is that the process now?
The shaded area up there.
Uh-huh.
Is north of the preserve.
Right.
And that makes us complete with whether we have the road or not.
Oh, okay.
If
Even
we
though
do
it's a
intend
cross?
to take the road,
Okay.
that would be something else that we would-
Right. After the initial annexation is done, if it is done, we would come back and do it.
Oh, so it'll just be the other way. Okay. And then is the whole of that property included? Because I see a
No.
couple of blue lines. There's a blue line down the middle of it. So is the whole of it, that whole triangle?
Anything inside this blue line.
All the way down, okay. Because there's one in the middle and I wondered if that was.
Is it two pieces of property there, Ed? That one going through the center?
This is one and that.
Okay, but they were asking for both of them?
I think this is just a reflection on the road. That's
No,
not.
no, she's asking if they're annexing both parcels. and the
Yes,
answer is
yes.
Okay,
yes.
that was, okay. And I agree, I just want to go on the record saying that I agree with Ed. I would much rather see any development that happens out there be in the city. Because if it's in the county, we have no say whatsoever, and it's a major gateway. What goes in there is up to public debate, but I think having it in the city is much better for the looks and the future development of us than trying to take it later. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vicki.
Is there any other public comment on this particular subject?
Jack Luther, 104 South Fifth Street. I just had a question about the sewer line. Ed, you said that the city was going to extend the sewer line to Swingville, the public sewer?
Mm-hmm.
And then-
Actually, the developer will extend, the city doesn't do those
Okay,
extensions.
but it'll be public sewer
Right.
to Swingville.
Mhm.
And then beyond that, it'll be a private sewer line?
Mhm.
So will people from Swingville Road to this annexation be able to connect to that private
They,
line?
they would not be able to connect to that private line because it won't be sized appropriately for additional connections. At some point in the future, should there be a desire for that to happen, certainly I'm sure they could approach the developers about, splitting a cost and doing something like that. The issue is that the business park is already there. It's already not fully, but pretty well built out, and built out with private septic systems that we don't have any indication are failing at the moment. So the idea that you're going to get them to go ahead and abandon their private septic systems and pay the prorated cost now of creating a public sewer line probably isn't going to happen. So for the moment, the best way to make that connection was to take it through the corner of Swingley and then a private connection.
Okay, I just question the reason for that, because if you're gonna dig the hole and place the pipe anyway, why not size it so that sometime in the future, everybody can use it?
Money.
And now I'm still gonna clarify. The private system is gonna be a pressurized system. It's gonna be a gravity line to Swingle Road.
Oh, okay.
And we run out of grade as we,
Okay.
you're actually going downhill, slightly, so it would be a pressurized system.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack. Any other public comment on this subject? Okay. We have a motion and a second. No further comment? Roll call.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern,
Motion passes. Resolution number 4455, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to sign the Montana Municipal Interlocal Authority, MMIA, revised and restated workers' compensation program agreement. Mr. Meese.
Mr. Chair, so as the City Commission is aware, the City of Livingston is a member of the Montana Municipal Interlocal Authority. It is a risk-sharing pool through which we purchase our coverage for a number of insurance programs, and one of those programs is the workers' compensation program. As a member of that pool, we are required to keep a current, I'm sorry, I forgot the title, Mr. Chair, program agreement with the MMIA. As a further reminder, I serve on the board of the MMIA, and why you have this document in front of you tonight is that for several years the board of MMIA has attempted to utilize, and we pass these down. We've attempted to utilize a set of industry standards and ratios in how we assess the health of our different programs. And what I'm passing out to you this evening is a copy of a policy that we adopted as a board for doing exactly that. So we go through a lot of effort in calculation to make sure that our premiums are being assessed in such a way as to create adequate reserves for the different programs, but not to over-reserve any given program. Because anytime that we have to raise the premium, we're obviously taking more money away from our members. And we pride ourselves on being as fiscally responsible as possible, maintaining adequate reserves, but not over-reserving. Where the board of directors has moved to this point is, as I said, we've done this for several years with all of our programs. But we've started to come to a point where we think it's important that the communities, the membership of the MMIA, know that we're using these ratios and that we put the use of these ratios inside the program agreements so folks understand how we're using those. So if you look on page 45 of the packet, and if you will scroll down, Emily, to section 4.5, risk assessment adjustment. This is the new section. This is the new language from this is what's new from our previous agreements. And basically what the language in section 4.5 does is it gives us the ability to implement these target ratios and then talks about what happens as a result of that. So again, we use these target ratios and the advice of our contract, what's the word I'm looking for? Actuary. We do an actuarial audit every couple of years on all of our programs. And from what those things tell us, then we can then make decisions about adjustments in premium that are either going to need to go up, or, and MMIA has done this even recently, we look at that and we go, well, based on all of our reserves and our confidence levels and our industry ratios, we can give some money back. And so this program agreement in front of you does basically that. It just puts language in that allows us, as a board at MMAA, to make these ratios an official policy that we're governing the program agreements by, and alerts the membership to what the potential implications are of using those ratios, whether it's for an upwards adjustment or a give back. So that's what you have in front of you this evening. This is a standard agreement. It's developed by the by the MMIA board in council with their attorneys. Every member received the same wording. It's like one of the contracts we get from state government. We don't have a lot of flexibility in changing the wording, but I did want everybody to understand what we're doing with this revision. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll certainly take any questions.
Okay. We'll start with a motion. Resolution number 4455.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve resolution 4455.
Thank you, Commissioner Stern. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Stern, second by Hoagland. Any commission discussion on this subject? Questions?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stern.
only that it's unclear to me what this will do to our rates. They remain unchanged.
Yeah, the purpose of this is not to have any, this language itself doesn't do anything to our rates today. It just allows the board to implement these ratios for how we govern the program as a whole. Going forward, these then certainly become an official method of determining assessing whether we need to do rate adjustments or not. But when we do this, if we do this, it doesn't directly take our rate up or down because we passed this agreement. This is simply a requirement of being a member of the pool.
And this is to provide a level of transparency to the investors in the pool.
To the membership, correct.
Thank you. That is all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. Commissioner Stern. Any other commissioner questions or comments? I just have a couple of points of clarification here. One, basically this is it. I mean, we're agreeing to it through a resolution, but there's no variance in the wording or the policy. This is their policy, we're accepting it.
Correct.
So we're just basically going through the formality of accepting it as
If
part of our policy for our workers' compensation.
If we want to continue in the workers' comp program, correct.
Right, exactly. Now, I did notice that in the memo that they provided on page 58 of our packet, it does say that we're supposed to have it signed and returned by April 15th. Has it already been signed?
No.
So we're okay?
We will be okay.
Okay. Then as I was looking at the parts that they reference here in this memo, and then they reference also the same section that you had looked at through page 45, 46. Just a couple questions there. So these ratios that you have referenced here and gave us a handout to, I don't think any of us have a chance to really look at these, don't really understand those ratios right at the moment. But it looks like when you look on page 46, and you look at under 4.5 numbers or letter C, it says the overriding clause, that this clause overrides and supersedes section 4.5A in that regard. What kind of, what action does that actually take place, and what would happen if that would be the case?
So typically, Mr. Chair, the language that you see on page 46, section C, is the type of language that council inserts in case they've missed something someplace else.
That's what I was thinking. All right.
I don't think
that's
I
a
can get more.
covered clause.
It is. I don't think I can get more technical than that.
Okay. Now, if you look at the top of the page, 46, which is the last sentence in section B, they refer to the consultant. Who is the consultant? It sounds like someone who's pretty awesome there. Who is the consultant?
Again, the consultant is our consulting actuary.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
About. Okay.
And so every year they are required to provide the board a preliminary rate setting memorandum that we usually get in at the January board meeting. And that also provides us, well, they're required to provide that every January, and then we try and set final rates in March, April, so that folks have that information when they're developing budgets. The ratios themselves, at every board meeting, we get a financial report from the finance officer of the MMIA, and they give us an updated read on every one of the ratios on each program.
I noticed in this memo also that there was a disbursement back to the members of the program of $1.5 million last year. What did that translate to the city of Livingston? Do you remember?
I have it upstairs, Mr. Chair.
That's a rough idea.
I'm thinking the number was around $30,000.
$30,000.
And typically, what that is, it's not a check, it's a credit.
Credit.
Against our costs to the MMI. I think it was around $30,000.
Thank you very much. I don't have any other questions. Any other questions, commissioners? Public comments? No, I didn't think there were any on that one. Roll call.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern,
Motion passes. Resolution 4456, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, accepting preliminary engineering report. Mr. Meeks.
Mr. Chair, just a moment.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, the City of Livingston received a grant for $15,000, I believe it was. Is that right? And then we paid the other $15,000 with the other amount of money required to complete the PER. A step in satisfying our grant responsibilities is that we accept the preliminary engineering report that Staley Engineering prepared, and the administration is certainly willing to take that step. This is a report that we also will use going forward as we apply for other grants to help with the construction of the new wastewater facility, specifically the Treasure State Endowment Program grant, which has consumed most of this post time for the last piece of history. Did I get that right?
All right. Is there a motion on resolution 4456?
I motion we accept resolution 4456.
Okay. Motion by Hoagland,
I second that.
second by Stern. Is there any discussion, questions? Commissioner Stern?
4456 and 4457.
Well, we're taking 4456 first.
What's the difference between the two?
So, Commissioner Stern, 4456 is we're accepting the findings contained within the preliminary engineering report that was prepared. Skipping ahead to 4457, as part of that report, there is the information is contained within that report that, in the city's opinion, reveals a finding of no significant environmental impact because of what we're proposing to do in that report. That is a separate action that we need to take legislatively and say we're holding that out and making that a public piece of information, because both of these things, a finding of no impact and acceptance of the PER, are both required documents for the TSEP grant application. So in effect, what we're doing is taking legislative actions that we can then make a part of that grant application that says to the TSEP folks, we accepted our PER, so we're saying we're going to live by it. And inside that PER, we made a finding of no significant impact, and we're prepared to defend that. And those are two requirements of the TSEP program.
And then by bringing that here to the commission, that's your formal recommendation based upon your guys' information. You're formally presenting that to the commission. And then by us voting on it, we have confidence in the administration, and that provides the state with the confidence to know that the engineering has all been done with due diligence.
That's correct.
Gotcha. So 4456 is the entire PER, and 4457 is the no impact with what we're planning to do.
Correct.
Great. Well said. Thank you. That clarifies my confusion. I yield.
Okay. Any other discussion, question? I do have one concerning this resolution on page 63. We talk about at the, and maybe there can be some clarification here. For the most part, the existing facilities are capable of handling the flows and loads projected for planning until year 2030, or planning year 2030, or planning up to year, is there something missing there, or am I not understanding that correctly? What's that mean?
For planning year 2030. So they're using 2030 as the time period between now and year 2030. Robert, you want to explain what that means? Yeah, absolutely. If you come through. Robert Siemens is our wastewater engineer from Staley Engineering.
Okay. And the corollary that goes with that is the next line under proposed solution, because the existing facility is not capable of meeting future flows, loads, and permit limitations beyond 2030, several processes must be upgraded or replaced. So we have a time period up till 2030 and a time period after 2030. I want to just kind of clarify those just for all of us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if it pleases the commission, I'll just take 5 minutes and go through that. The PER process is a statutorily controlled process, a bunch of conditions we have to meet. One of the things they ask us to do is select a planning period of approximately 15 to 20 years. So when we do our analysis, we're looking at what conditions in the city will be in a period of time in the future. So based on that projection of population flows and food loadings, we determined that a series of upgrades are required. There are 3 reasons for this. Number 1, the permit limits are changing, and that's a state action that is happening at the end of this year. Number 2, some of the existing equipment is about 30 years old and is obsolete. And then you also have growth that's happening, although slowly. So those 3 things projected against the planning period is what produces the recommendations to upgrade. It takes about 4 to 6 years to complete an upgrade project, and that's one of the reasons we look so far into the future. And I think, as you recall, Mr. Chairman, we did a tour at the plant last year, and we'd actually been thinking about this project the prior year to that, so it's a fairly long time.
I noticed that in your population projections, you went up to, what was it, about 10,000? What's that? 10,600. Is that a projection for the future, 2030? So you're projecting that you want to create a system that's going to handle that type of load.
Correct, and part of that has to do with how water use is managed in the community as well. If you continue to use water per capita basis as you do now, it's around 10,500. If water use continues to decline, or with better conservation, using more typical factors, the proposed upgrade might take you to 12,000. So you have quite a bit of capacity. And that's, we don't want to make it too big, but we don't want to make it too small either, because it takes so long to do a project and it's so difficult to arrange the funding that we think 10.5 is about.
Right. Thank you very much. Is there any other questions at all at this point? Public comment? Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. Roll call, please.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
Motion passes. Resolution number 4458, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing city manager to sign agreement. Whoops, wrong one. Skipped one. Erase that part. Resolution 4457, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, finding of no significant impact for the Livingston wastewater treatment plant upgrade project. Mr. Meese.
Mr. Chair, again, this is a separate but related document, a separate issue that we need to provide certification of as part of the grant process, the TSEP grant process. That grant, by the way, you're wondering why we're doing this now. That grant is due. When is that grant due? This month. Okay, so it's due this month, and it takes that. It is it's actually awarded by the legislature. So they will be in the process of making recommendations and determinations by the legislative process in 15. So that's why we're doing this so early now.
Right. Thank you very much. Is there a motion on resolution 4457?
I'll make a motion that move forward with resolution 4457.
All right, motion by Reddington,
I'll second.
second by Hoagland. Discussion? I just do have one question. Since it's a legislative action at the state level, do you go up there to represent the city in regard to answering questions and to lobby on our behalf?
Absolutely. We've done it every time, and it's always been successful. We're one of the more successful TSEP communities.
Good.
Not because of me, but because of our excellent grant writing staff. I just drive the car.
Okay. All right. Roll call.
And I'd just like to say thanks to Robert. It's been a long process to complete the PER, and it's just the city owes him a lot of thanks. So in gratitude, I would say personally.
Well, Robert, thank you very much.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
Motion passes. Resolution 4458, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing city manager to sign agreement with Charter Business Services on behalf of the city and in conjunction with Park County government for broadband and internet services to city-county facilities. Mr. Meese.
Mr. Chair, ask Erica Hoffman, IT Department Manager for Park County, and as you're aware, Park County provides IT services to the City of Livingston, to join us in this conversation. I'm sure that nobody wants me to explain the difference between a gigabyte and a megabyte, and a kilobyte, and all of those types of things. So she is going to be our technical expert for the evening. But I guess in concept, about a year ago, Ms. Hoffman and myself started a process where we tried to bring together not only the city, but the county, the schools, and the hospital And that was for looking into what opportunities might exist for those 4 entities to go together and basically share the cost of purchasing a big pipe. Erica can explain it much better than me. Very simply put, our broadband capacity in this building is about the equivalent of a residential cable modem. That means that our law enforcement, our fire departments, our dispatch unit, finance department, all of that is moving across that level of speed in broadband. So anyways, we did very good work with that particular effort. Ms. Hoffman and Ms. Seninga, Liz Seninga, who also is a contractor, worked very diligent on that. Over time, we started to see the hospital had to drop off for their own reasons, the school district had to drop off for their own reasons, but the city and the county have stayed together. At this point, we had a meeting both at the city-county meeting, and then we had a follow-up session about a week later, I believe, and the decision was made that for the purposes of this building and city and county facilities, our best decision was to move forward in purchasing broadband connections and services from Charter Communications. Charter is a provider to state government and are able to provide some of the rates that we will be getting as a benefit of this program because of that. So we're basically piggybacking on some of the state contract to get these particular rates. Erica, you want to add some fancy technical stuff to that?
No, I would say that we are really truly at 30 megabits per second download speeds and 12 up, which we pay residential grade for this entire building, and it just is not adequate anymore for what we're trying to do and grow in technology.
Mr. Chair, I guess just to go along with what Erica was saying just then, I know that just at the end of last week, I believe it was, I received an email from Liz describing a situation that had happened overnight in the dispatch unit where we actually, maybe you could describe that better, Erica.
We lost internet connection for 45 minutes. We are not notified by our provider because we do pay residential grade. So we were not notified, so IT did not know. And dispatch lost their entire view to all of the officers and deputies on duty. So all of the money that we spent to make our units more efficient in the new CAD software and mobile software basically went all out the window for that 45 minutes because we lost the view. The dispatchers relied only on their radio and phone call communications, and that's where we were at. So they couldn't see that the officers were at a different address, even though they went to the right one. There was some confusion there, and that would have been eliminated had the maps been up like they were supposed to be.
Who's our present carrier?
Our present carrier is Charter. We just pay for a cable modem.
What does that take to upgrade that physically? What does that take to get that in the building?
It's actually just electronics that
Okay.
they're going to bring. We actually have the capability is right here.
Oh, okay.
Fiber is here.
Okay.
They're not going to charge us installation. They have to bring us the electronics. We have some work to do on our firewall. We have to get a new range of IP addresses to accommodate all the networks, but we should be able to accommodate fairly simply, and I say that loosely.
Right.
Are we charged for all the upgrades if we need to add to them, or is that part of our package?
Do you mean upgrades as in?
Well, if we have to deal with, say, the firewall issue or having to change up anything, is sometimes the equipment comes with it. Sometimes we're paying out of pocket for it.
We do get the equipment from Charter and they do maintain it. We do have to pay for the firewall issues. It's just depends on who owns what. They will help us maintain their equipment. They will upgrade it if they deem that it's necessary. We do have to come up with our own firewall issues. We will troubleshoot that piece, and then it all kind of has to work together, which is one of the reasons the IT department has put together a network design
and we're also contracting with CompuNet to help us implement that design to the best of our ability.
Thank you. Why don't you hold on there for a moment? We'll get a motion and some more discussion. There might be some more questions in regards to this. Do we have a motion on Resolution 4458?
I move we approve resolution 44.
Motion by Stern,
I'll second that.
second by Reddington. Commission discussion.
Quick question, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Stern, you have the floor.
Thank you. Great job, Eric. I know you've done a ton of work on this, and this is totally needed in the information age and all the information. Is there any chance to go bigger? Is this the biggest system they offer for someone like us?
We are going with the gig pipe to interconnect all of our outlying offices, which right now is definitely more than sufficient for us. We are only going with the internet speed of 100 megabits per second for this building. But right now, because it's such a huge jump, what we're paying for right now is 30 megabits per second non-dedicated. We would be paying for 100 megabits dedicated, meaning only this building would be using that capability. So that would be a huge jump for us. Now we can move up in that bracket if we needed to, but right now we just want to take it the first year at a time and see if we need or where our capability really needs improvement if we do.
And you can move up that bracket without changing the infrastructure.
Right.
Okay, that's good. And you said the outlying sites will get a gigabyte. So like our new finance office would be connected on that?
They'll get it. We'll all share the WAN connection. So we have a gig, and then we all take a part of that, and then we each pay for our own internet. So the finance building would get 100 megabits per second of internet, and then they'd share into our network the WAN capability, which is the gigabit network.
That's the internal network connecting
You got
everything
it.
in the city offices to the county. You guys can share all your information at the fastest speed.
Yep.
Which is where the dominant need is.
Exactly.
And if you don't have an answer to this, this is fine. Is there any sorts of projections on when this upgrade that we're moving to will then be obsolete? I mean, it seems like it happens every year.
It does happen. We don't see it being obsolete anywhere in the near future, just because fiber has been the answer for cities and counties, the state, and we've looked at other communities and they're still using fiber. We just aren't there yet.
Well, great. Well, this is a great upgrade, and thanks for all your hard work. I definitely support this. Thanks.
Okay. Any other commission questions or comments? I do have a couple. So we do about the hard infrastructure first. Just uniquely, I had my internet went out this weekend. I have Charter. He came, the technician there's several technicians in Livingston, as you probably know, came over and, I was talking to him about this. And it's interesting to note that Livingston has fiber coming right into Bennett Street in their office there. And my understanding is it comes down Park Street, even comes in front of Calendar Street. Yeah. And then their main technical office is there on Bennett Street, right across from the wastewater treatment plant. And this particular technician, I don't know if he's 100% accurate, he said that Livingston has better fiber connection than even Bozeman and Gallatin County, which I thought was interesting because it comes directly from Billings, from one of their main centers. So technically, I wasn't quite sure how this works. If there's fiber out there in the street, is it just a matter of finding the location, digging up to it, tapping into it, and bringing it into the building? Is that how that physically works? Do you have any idea how that works?
When fiber isn't around, yes, but I think with it being, they can tap into it electronically and just bring it to our building. There is no digging.
Oh, that's nice.
And I think that's the reason there's no installation fee for any of the offices that we have chosen to put on this contract.
Good. You don't have to know where it lies underground.
They haven't been very forthcoming with their maps of fiber. In fact, only in the last 6 months have I even seen a fiber map, and it wasn't charter. So I'm sure we could talk to somebody and try and get a good feel for where it is, but I haven't done that yet.
And now, Ed, you were mentioning that you originally started the conversation with the schools, the hospital, the city, and the county. And what were the main reasons for the schools and the hospital to pull out of this particular avenue? It seems like it's a pretty nice deal.
Well, the hospital had its own issues in terms of needing dedicated service and the volume of service they need to ship the electronic medical images and all those types of things. The schools receive federal what's called E-rate funding to help offset their costs. They have, my understanding is that they've already made a lot of their building-to-building connections, and so what we're doing here, some of that they've already put that infrastructure in place, and so they were basically just looking for a little larger pipe, and what their specific considerations were when they pulled out, I really don't have those. They didn't really articulate those in great detail.
Were the negotiation with both of the administrations, hospital administration and school administration?
Right. We all started together. We had vendors in the room. We worked that process, like I said, until late last fall. We went into a situation where we were basically waiting on both of the major vendors to provide us some cost estimates. And it seemed like during that piece was when the hospital started to make some decisions about their need to go a different way. And I think just about 3 weeks ago, we got word that the schools were going to go a slightly different direction. I would say this, though, I think to go towards your question a little bit, Chairman Bennett, nothing that we're doing here, or at least my understanding of what the schools are doing, precludes any of us from working together in the future. We're simply settling our own operational issues at the moment, but it does not, we're not plugging things in or unplugging things that would say, oh, well, because we did that a week ago, we now can't work together in the future.
Right.
There might be some timing issues based on the relative contracts of 3 years or 5 years or whatever, but from a technical aspect, it doesn't preclude that type of future cooperation, whether it's with the school district or the hospital or some other unknown entity at this point. Okay. And certainly the big value for us and the county is that we continue to work together. So we created this relationship between the city of Livingston and the county IT department in 2008. Does that sound right, Erica? 2008. And there's, a whole lot of reasons, standardizing our computer systems, and this is another way that we're able to bring the two entities even closer together in terms of we're going to operate the same system and share the cost on a rational basis. So I think this is a great move forward for both governments.
How does this, I've been attending the Northern Rockies Economic Development District, and they're in Bozeman, they're putting together this thing that they have. I only know a little bit about it, like they did in Butte, which is the data centers. How does that affect us as far as, is there a possibility for us to do something of similar nature to not only provide it for these larger organizations and even maybe someone like Printing for Less and residents? Not the city provided for the residents. I mean, but for this, this type of bandwidth would be for residential use and for business use in the community as well. Is there those type of possibilities in the future? Do you know that?
Yes, absolutely. It's called the Community Fiber Ring.
Yeah.
Yes. It's very much a possibility here in Livingston. It's just a very long planning process. It needs to be very well thought out and planned out. Bozeman is in the first phases. They've come a long way. They have 2 dedicated people working on this project. I went to their meeting yesterday. They've come a long way, and it's definitely a possibility here in Livingston. But I think it's something that we should be thinking about in the next 5 years. We need to get into the fiber game before we understand exactly what we're getting and what we would benefit from.
Okay. So if I could piggyback on what Ms.
Sure.
Hoffman is saying there. So I think Eric is exactly correct. It is a long process. It is something that we really need guidance from industry professionals at a much more macro level. The city of Bozeman is right now hired a consultant to start the planning process. That's where they're at. We had a meeting with some members of the executive board of the Northern Rocky Economic Development District last week. And I think the next step is that with Erica's help, saw Katie here.
Katie's back there.
Yeah, that Katie is going to be putting together a group of local stakeholders, I think the word would be both public and private, to start similar effort on this side of the hill, planning effort, grant application. The city of Bozeman went through the EDD to apply for a grant to assist with their cost for that. We're about to start the same kind of effort, but as Erica said, it is a long-term process. Now, within that, as a subset, because we have been in contact with Printing for Less, and we are aware that they have some operational issues, we are at the moment working with them, the city of, and Katie and I are working with them, and we'll probably be back to the city commission in the very near future with a proposal to create a fiber connection between the backbone that I think is on 89 and bring that connection into the West End Infrastructure Improvement District, which is the district that was created basically.
The TIF district.
It's like a TIF district.
Right.
It's not actually a TIF district, but it works very similar. And when that was created as a way of financing and paying back the debt necessary to get the water and sewer connections for PFL's facility. We have an opportunity to probably do a very similar thing with the extension of a piece of fiber from the backbone to that district, which would then let PFL access that and would also probably spur new technological development within that particular district. So that's just a teaser. We'll probably be back within a month or so with a specific proposal. So there are, and that's one of the reasons I value having Erica here tonight, there are multiple fiber conversations going on. There's our conversation, there's the community conversation, and then there's the PFL conversation. And they're all important. They all have different timelines. So it's pretty awesome to have Erica kind of nudging and guiding and advising us as we go forward there. So I appreciate her help with this.
Great. Good. Now costs. We got this sheet.
You do.
We're looking at some big costs here.
We are.
Tell us a little more about that.
We are looking at big costs. I think we got the fiscal note provided to you late. It wasn't in
Right.
the original packet. So yes, we are.
Did you get it? No. I know what it looks like. There's one number and it goes for 3 years. Got it memorized. You can look at it and pass it down.
Right. So that number is $40,000.
44.
$44,000. Keep me accurate. And it is something that we started with the CIP process to start to load these numbers in, and you will see them in the budget proposals as we go forward. There's a cost split out on that same page as we divided among the different funds, if you will, based on their use of the technology.
I noticed that it's pretty overloaded into the general fund.
It is, but you have to remember that the general fund includes police, which is now a major user of our broadband capacity based
so
on.
You're saying that this will come out, part of that will come out of their budget.
Exactly. That will be spread across all of the general fund, police, fire, and then while there are costs coming out for the different utilities, the finance department also is a major and will continue to be a major user, not because of their new location, just so much because of the interplay with the utility billing system and the meters that have to be read electronically and all those types of things. So yes, there is a pretty significant cost that ends up in the general fund.
Okay, so the general, now, Jesse's not here tonight, so I don't know if you can answer this, but, you know, we've been having this target for the general fund of 16.5% or whatever.
Correct.
The exact decimal is. How's this gonna affect that? Do you have any idea at this point?
The last conversation that I had with Jesse and Ms. Cunningham late last week was the same conversation we always have at budget time at this point in the budget process, which is the general fund looks okay, but I think we could make it better. So I don't have numbers and ratios. I think it's too early for that. We're still getting and loading in the department request at this point. But as we've done in the past, and as the Commission's well aware, we will do everything we can to keep that 16.6 or larger. That's very important to us.
Now, I know, how long is this contract? Is it a 3-year contract to start?
The 5-year contract.
5 year, because I know it's probably in here, but you know, it's
Sure.
30 pages worth of stuff. I wasn't know.
It's a 5-year contract, and this is a very easy answer. At a 5-year contract, we get a reduced price, and so we're actually lowering the budget impact that we have.
So this
any given year.
44,000 for the city, is that equal value? What does the county have to pay for this particular?
Well, the county's ratio is different. One, because most of the services that they're going to be providing for are inside this building at the moment. And then we need some pretty high-speed connections to move information from Bennett Street, the meters and that stuff, to the finance offices, whether that's in this building or downtown. So we're bearing a little more cost, but those costs are all apportioned based on who's receiving the benefit. So, for instance, if the county were to add their new search and rescue building to the 1 gigabyte pipe, then that puts an additional user on the pipe, and we would change the prorate of that piece of the cost, and then the county would pay for their own internet service. Did that say?
Exactly right.
So we've tried to keep it where some places we're paying a split based on how many people are playing, and then in other places you're paying just for the services that you're consuming, like you're paying for your own internet service or download speeds or whatever. And in each of these, Bennett Street shows off 100 megabytes per second. We have the opportunity to choose some different speeds than that.
Yes, you could go down to 10 megabits
Right.
per second with this vendor.
Right. So we do have some scalability based on the facility that's being served. These are just the volumes that we thought were most appropriate for those particular locations.
From your expertise, who was going to be the most important user as far as bandwidth in this particular scenario? Yeah.
Without a doubt, Shannon's department, the utility department. I mean, besides the city-county building, an outlying office that will be a big consumer and in the most need is the utility department out on Bennett Street.
Okay. As far as this building, who's got the most critical issues? Is that dispatch? Police?
One of highway and fire,
Yeah, okay.
police, deputies.
You know, I would say dispatch first, simply because if we lose service to dispatch, we lose service to all of our public safety divisions. In terms of being a consumer, law enforcement, police, and the sheriff's office are probably a fairly large consumer now based on the in-car terminals and those types of things. But when we go through a situation like we did with dispatch just recently, that's a lot scarier than we really want to see happen.
GIS is also a very big consumer.
Well, and that's towards your point with the utility office. We could do a lot more for ourselves from the GIS system, but we don't have a way to move that data back and forth now. So basically, Shannon or Jim calls Erica up and says, I need a map, and it needs to look like this and use these colors and be this big, and can I get it by tomorrow? And she's always been great on doing that for us, but now she could say, turn your printer on and do it yourself, basically, in a very nice way, because she always does.
So this number that I see, is this a monthly number on page 100? That
Yes,
one,
sir.
4768?
Those are all monthly numbers.
So that's the city's output for this service on a monthly basis. Is that correct?
Well, each one of those.
Yeah, each one of those, but there's a total.
Yes.
Scroll down, okay.
Yeah.
So that's the total that of outlay for the city per month.
No, scroll down.
That
There's
4,700.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because
That's
there
pretty
was the
close.
800, is that included with the county? Your guys is 4,100?
I'm sorry. What did you say here?
The county's in there too at 800, so
Right.
is that total including the county's 800 a month?
Oh, it might be.
So it might be a little bit less than that,
Yeah.
47.
Yeah.
I think that's for everybody,
Yeah. I see what
because
you're
that
saying.
includes the 1,600, and we're splitting that. So the 1,600 on that internet,
Right.
800
Yeah,
of it is the county's cost.
You're right.
So this
Okay.
number is $800 less for the state.
Okay, because when I multiplied that number out by 12, we get about $57,000.
So
Yeah,
yes.
you're right.
So that number is what the city county is paying.
Yep.
And, which is about 57, and we're paying 44, which is about, so they're paying 13. County, paying 13,000 of that.
Yes, that's about right. Mhm.
About right. Okay.
Until we start adding our outlying offices, or the county starts adding on if they choose. Our public works director is thinking about it, so it's just, they haven't made the decision yet.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sterner,
are you done?
I am done. You have the floor.
Just a quick budget question or two. You said this is in the CIP?
I think actually what I should have said is the cost for the connections to be made at the city finance office are in the CIP.
Okay, significantly less than,
Yeah.
$44,000.
Yeah.
But obviously, we have all the intention of working this into this year's budget.
Absolutely.
And it won't be needed to be put into future year CIP because it'll already be working in the budget.
Correct. And I can't remember right now if Ms. Hogue went ahead and put these dollar into her budget assumptions. She makes budget assumptions about the operating budget going forward or not. I know that the capital expenditures for the finance office were in there, but I'm not 100% sure how she did that.
And the street maintenance district, paying some $3,000. Is that just to spread the pain?
There's probably a piece of that, but also they do, the street maintenance district does all of our plowing and road construction and those types of things. So there are pieces of software as well as their access to the GIS maps and different types of things that we'd like to be able to turn them up on as well.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Can I get a copy of this? Or can I have your copy?
Sure.
There should be one in everybody's box. I'll make sure that there
All right,
is.
I'll just go pick it up. You can just-
We'll do it
It
electronically.
was sent from Jesse last week
Oh,
as a PDF. Yes, this particular one.
all right, good.
Okay.
What's wrong with your email?
I love it. Thanks, Erica, for all your time and for coming tonight.
So, yes, thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate that. So, you and Jesse have talked about this quite a bit. This is obviously a new expenditure for us that we weren't necessarily expecting. And you both feel that this can fit into each one of these enterprise fund budgets and our general budget without adversely affecting our ability to maintain a high level of reserves.
We're going to do everything we can.
So that's yes or no?
That's a congressional budget answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any other questions or concerns or comments from the commission? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
4.
Motion passes. That takes care of the resolutions for this evening. Action item A, discuss, approve, deny the appointment of two city commissioners to a joint budget and compact review committee with Park County government. You want to say anything on that, or you want me to say something on that? Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair, I'm just not sure what this is. I had to leave the meeting early that day.
Oh, okay. It was requested by the county and the city. We were pretty much in agreement, isn't that right, Commissioner Stern, that we needed to just take a look at the compact and the budget allocations for the compact that we have so far in regards to the city and the county. That was quite a while ago.
I
I'm
thought,
testing my memory here.
yeah, mine too. I know that there was definitely talk about putting together some sort of committee where,
A couple of city commissioners, a county commissioner, so that to keep everybody apprised of what was going on in every organization's budget process. You know, I mean, we're the biggest city in the county. What we do affects them, what they do affects us. And it's useful, just as those city-county meetings are useful to be for face-to-face communication between the city and the county commissioners. It would be useful for the city commissioners to know what's going on with the county CIP process, which they're beginning, and vice versa. It's useful for the county commissioners to know what's going on with our CIP process. That's where I thought this was, and then you also raised the other issue which was discussed, which is the compact, where we are with the compact, and if, I'm going to get this wrong, my memory is vague as well, but if we wanted to get a committee together to figure out what the next steps are on the compact. So there's two separate things there that could be combined in the same committee. Certainly the budget was an element. Each budget was an element of that. So that's my recollection.
And one of the issues was the library and coming to the agreement with the city and the county about how many mills each one was going to contribute for the next 3 years in order to help them get through their rough period.
Was that discussion at that point in the city-county meeting, were we talking about?
I don't think it was in reference to this.
No.
No, I don't think it was in reference to this.
And excuse me for this question, was the discussion about the library intended to be put into the compact?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, as a document, as an agreement between the city and the county.
Would it be unreasonable to combine both the budget and the compact discussions into one?
I think that's the intention. That's part of the intention. So basically what we needed to do, we had this on the agenda last meeting, and we decided to postpone it to this meeting because we only have 3 commissioners. Of course, we only have 4 commissioners, but we can always volunteer Mel, for sure.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So just for a point of information, in the past, the way that we have handled the city-county compact is that we initially created a rather long list of items that we should create chapters about. And then we prioritized that list and began to knock those things off in order of most importance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say on behalf of the city, we attempted to process several chapters at once. That did not work. It became very frustrating. Information was not getting passed. I don't have any other way to say this. It wasn't getting passed to the appropriate folks in the county organization. They were passing things, we were passing things, and we were going back and tweaking it and passing it again. And so to save a lot of future frustration, I basically adopted the approach that, okay, we're going to work on one chapter at a time. When we complete a chapter, we'll move on to the next chapter. And we also adopted a process where we'll require the county commission to vote it and pass it first, and then we'll bring it to the city commission. It seemed like as we were doing it in a reverse order, it wasn't working so well. So for the purpose of the compact, we got to, let's see, we got to the building issues, and I'm thinking that was like June, July of last year. when we were dealing with a chapter talking about how we apportion the cost within this building. We met several times, and when I say we, that's been a pretty open committee. Whoever wants to show up shows up, but the minimums have always been myself, Ms. Hogue, Ms. Hartung, and then usually at least one county commissioner. I think in the past it was Randy, Commissioner Taylor. And then once Commissioner Tinsley came on, he took that spot. So those are four that almost are always at those meetings when they're occurring. We got to June, July, that time period of last year. The conversation around the building, separation of costs for the building broke down, and Commissioner Tinsley said that the county commission wanted to put that on hold and revisit it at some point in the future. So that's where it sits today. At a couple of city-county meetings, I think there's been discussion about whether we should restart. At any point that the county's ready to restart that conversation, I'm certainly ready to do that. If the idea is to move on to another chapter and deal with that chapter and come back, we could certainly do that. I am, though, very hesitant to get more than one chapter open and active at a time. It just seems like when we tried that in the past, there was just too much confusion. Folks were reading drafts, and they were getting what was in one draft confused with what was in another draft. Again, stuff wasn't always circulating in a timely fashion. So certainly if we combine those into a budget compact committee, we can do that. I'm not really sure that that's the best way to do it. I think perhaps they're best done held separately, simply because sometimes when we're doing the compact discussions, we need a certain group of folks in the room, and when we're doing the budget discussions, we may need a different group of folks in the room. And so having everybody show up at the same meeting and then trying to sort out what's what as you go, I can see that getting kind of complicated, but certainly if that's what the city and the county want to do, I'm open to it.
Well, why don't we take a look at it this way? I think that as you were talking, I was a few little bits of memory were coming back about what we were discussing at that point. And I think that Commissioner Tinsley brought up the idea that he wanted to revisit some of the compact items. So maybe what we should do to proceed, since at the time we were discussing having not a quorum of city commissioners, 2 city commissioners, and not a quorum of a county commissioner, and I think it was Mr. Tinsley was the most interested. So 1 county commissioner, and just have an initial meeting to clarify the goals and the intent, without any specific thing other than just that on the agenda, so that we can clarify which way we should go, and bring up some of these nuances of this process, so that we don't try to do too much at one time, and at the same time accommodate the request of the commissions to move this process forward. And I think that might be, and we do have a city commission, city-county meeting tomorrow morning.
Correct, 9:30.
So maybe we can bring it up at that time. Maybe we can take this opportunity to volunteer 2 commissioners. And if it turns out that this proves to be a valuable direction, then we can move forward in an organized fashion. If it doesn't, then we can figure out what's going to be the best way to approach those things. Does that sound okay to everyone here?
Absolutely.
All right. I'd be interested in being on that if I could volunteer myself. And Commissioner Stern or any other commissioners be interested in doing that rather than being volunteered, that would be great.
Are the new commissioners interested at all?
I am.
I move we appoint Commissioner Bennett and Commissioner Hoagland to our new
Budget compact.
city county budget compact review committee.
Okay. Is there a second?
Clarified.
What's that?
To be clarified.
To be
after we
clarified,
meet.
yes. Is there a
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so a motion by Stern, second by Reddington. Any other discussion? So the idea in my mind is that we're going to take the first step. We'll meet with the county commission tomorrow, see how they want to proceed, set up an initial meeting, and see where that takes us. Okay, roll call. Okay, roll call.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
Motion passes. Action item B, discuss, approve, deny change order for tennis court project.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Holmes to join us at the front of the room and help us with the next couple of agenda items.
Good evening. As everybody can probably tell, K&M Construction had a great first week on the tennis courts reconstruction. I think in the first week, they got all the gravel prepped and actually paved it by that Friday. So the last time I was there, the fence was being installed, and Miss Lucy is here, so she could probably add to that as well. But during the pre-construction conference, these change order items were discussed. The plans that originally shown 3.5 inches of asphalt. K&M was going to donate a 1/2 inch to the Tennis Association or the City of Livingston. Clarify. The additional 1/2 inch to make it a full 4-inch section in 2 2-inch lifts. The cost was $2,520, and the representative for the top coat, the surface on the tennis courts, which I'm not an expert on, but it sounds like it's a lot more durable, has a longer lasting capabilities than what was in the plans and specifications. So to do that upgrade is $660. The Livingston Tennis Association has the money and has approved this change order. So this is just the formal process to have K&M Construction get paid for the work.
Sounds good. Is there a motion on action item B?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve action item B.
Motion by Stern,
I'll second.
second by Hoagland. Discussion? Commissioner Stern.
Thank you. It's worth noting that the Tennis Association has done a phenomenal job putting this all together. You guys have raised a ton of money in a relatively short amount of time. Great job putting all this together. We certainly appreciate all your efforts, Mr. Teeter's efforts, not only with the LTA, but also coaching all the kids. Good job, guys. And thanks, Shannon, for keeping an eye on us.
Okay. Further discussion? Roll call.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
Motion passes. Action item C, discuss, approve, deny new location of John Bozeman statue. Okay.
All right. Here about a month ago, Sandy and I met with Dave Carter out at the intersection of Park Street and Highway 10, and came up with a location that we staked that we felt would be a great location for the John Bozeman statue. Now, that was damaged many years ago before I was in my position, but I know Dave has actually done a lot of restoration work, and he's in the process of being able to reset that. So we staked that. We met with MDT and Rob Buckvich and got their blessing that the location was acceptable to them. And now we're bringing it to you to make an approval or not approval of the location.
Okay. So we're just approving the location then?
In the installation.
In the installation. Okay.
Part of the installation, the city's going to do some in-kind work. We'll take our backhoe or mini excavator out and we'll dig the foundation for the statue, and then we'll certainly assist Dave in making sure that it gets set on the stone properly.
Great. Is there a motion on action item C?
I make a motion that we approve the new location of the John Bozeman statue.
All right.
I
Motion by-
second.
Motion by Reddington, second by Hoagland. Discussion?
I think it's a great location for the sculpture. I think it makes a lot of sense to be in a place, you know, looking towards Bozeman, the whole route and area that he was part of. I think it's great. Good choice.
Guess I will ask, is there any preference on the way the statue's going to be faced? We all thought it was pretty obvious that it needed to go towards Park Street, but
Yeah, that's what I would say. Kind of turn slightly towards Park Street. It's back towards Bozeman.
Could you put it on a rotator? It can just spin around. Look
In the
all
wind.
directions.
In the wind.
Disco.
Yeah. For those who been around here for a while, there was this really nice statue of the bust of John Bozeman. He was on that little island, most people know, right there by 9th Street, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And got hit by a car. So it was a hit and run. That was a long time ago. That was about 10 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's been at least 10 years. You remember?
No, it's
No?
been about 5.
What?
The guy
I
in
mean,
the
the
car.
guy who hit the car?
Yeah.
Oh, he passed away? By hitting the car? By hitting John? Oh, my word. Oh, well. Shouldn't make light of that. I'm sorry.
So it's been about 5 years since it.
Oh. It seemed like a longer time ago.
That's what I thought too.
All right. Do we have a motion? Roll call.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
Motion passes. Action item D, discuss, approve, deny Livingston Mental Health Center's special parking request. Ready, trying to slough this off up tonight, aren't you? As many as you can.
Mr. Chair, page 109 of the packet. I'll ask Emily to show that to you. Okay, so these 3 vehicles that you are looking at here. So for a point of reference, the white van is on the far western corner of the Western Mental Health Center as it faces Clark Street. I think that's right. Yeah, West Clark Street. So currently, we've been approached by the mental health center before. So I guess, yes, the far western corner of the mental health center is the white van. So if you're driving away from the white van, you're going toward Sacagawea.
Is that right? So that's on Clark Street?
That's Clark Street.
Okay.
We've been approached by the mental health center before. I think it was actually about a year and a half ago. Different reasons. It didn't happen, both from the administration and the mental health center. They approached us just recently again about this particular situation. What they have is 1 2-hour handicapped spot, which right now is where the white van is parked in this picture. What through working with the mental health center, their request and what the administration is comfortable doing is basically that where the white van sits in this picture, we would create a loading unloading zone, 1 spot loading unloading zone, back the 2-hour handicap spot up to where the multicolored Jeep Cherokee is sitting, and then the 3rd vehicle back would be the start of our general 2-hour parking. The mental health center uses this particular van and to transport folks to their location and take them home. They have a variety of different types of public health services that they provide. And by putting a 2-hour by putting a loading, unloading zone on that far corner would allow them basically to easily get the vehicle in there and still keep 2-hour handicap parking space available for the rest of that block. I would say too that with the start of our new enforcement efforts, we actually issued a parking ticket to that white van very early on. And so that accelerated the need for this remedy, at least as far as the mental health center is concerned. I know I've reviewed this situation in concert with Mr. Woodhall and Ms. Payovich, our parking permit technician, and we're all very comfortable with this solution. Anything you would add to that, Jim?
Jim, would you have to modify the size for that, the center parking spot, the proposed handicap in the center?
No, they're already standard.
Typically downtown, the parking spots are 18 to 20 foot
Okay.
where they're marked. With this unloading zone, we would make the curb the appropriate color, which they can apply
White, I think, right?
with the sign.
But those existing will accommodate the loading and a handicap spot. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion on action item D?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve action item D.
I'll second.
Motion by Stearns, second by Hoagland. Discussion? Questions? Roll call.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
Motion passes. Action item E, discuss, approve, deny street vacation request for the 1200 block of West Gallatin Street. Mr. Neese.
Chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Woodhull to join us for this explanation. If we could see page 113. Yeah, there we go. Can you move that up just a little bit? Yeah.
It's a little hard to kind of visualize this location here.
So, well, why don't you do it, Jim?
At the bottom of this picture is Front Street, and the blue outline is the piece of street we're discussing. On the west side, to the left of the picture, is 13th Street. It dead ends into that fence you see is at the bottom side of Molly Drive, which is a cul-de-sac that is accessed from the top of the hill.
Why don't you give them some business locations there, Jim? Point out a couple of spots.
A1 Butler.
Yeah.
Gallatin Street. That track is a one-lane remnant of Gallatin Street, which actually exists further to the east. And we carry on. There's properties of street has never been developed.
Never intending to develop it too, right?
So as the general in your packet states, the development review committee has looked at this. Street department has no desire, and sees no need to create a street here. And there are no utilities, we'll need to place utilities in this road.
So what, obviously I didn't read this very well. What property is going to gain the vacation?
The large white building immediately below the outline is the applicant, Rick's Refrigeration.
Okay.
The way that street abandonment works, the property to the north, which I believe is East Step, who developed that small subdivision, would have a claim to the north half of that street.
Okay. All right, is there a motion on action item E?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve action item E.
Motion by Stern,
I'll second.
second by Hoagland. further discussion or questions?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stern?
Jim, do we know what Rick wants to do? with it?
His business is recently located there. I don't have exact plans, but he does want to expand his office space and some storage.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? Comments? Open comment. Roll call?
Chairman Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
Motion passes. Action item F, discuss administration's plan changes to citywide street sweeping operations and their preferences regarding the use of enforcement, tickets, towing, et cetera, within the program.
Mr. Chair, we have discussed, first I'm going to ask Mr. Holmes to join us again at the table. We have discussed street sweeping. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you very much.
We've discussed street sweeping operations before and some of the challenges that the city faces with our street sweeper. The A primary challenge is simply getting vehicles off the street in a timely fashion so the sweeper can have full access to the curb to do the entire street in an effective way. We've tried some different things with this, identifying trouble blocks, letters, different types of things. I think one of the issues that we've had in the past is that we had a fairly difficult system of explaining to folks when we were going to be at their block and how we were going to be there at different times and those types of things. So Public Works has addressed this subject over the course of the last month or so and done quite a bit of work. I'm going to ask Shannon to comment on that. Basically, what we want to do here tonight is twofold. One, we want to just educate the City Commission and the community about how we're going to begin to approach street sweeping. I think how Public Works has basically simplified the schedule and give people sort of some insight on that. Number two is we would like some consensus or direction from the City Commission as we get started, which certainly doesn't lock you into stone. But one of the options that we have as we adopt this new methodology is we could operationally begin to use our code enforcement department to issue parking tickets as we begin this new street sweeping operation. So we provide adequate notice, we put it in the newspaper on a regular basis, we get it on the website, we go out and place signs at appropriate times before we're going to be there, and then if folks haven't moved their vehicles, code enforcement comes through and issues parking tickets. That's a similar approach to what the city's done in the past, I think, a long time ago. My understanding, historically, from talking to Chief Rainey and some others on the commission at that time, is that became a very burdensome process. Is that a good way to describe it, Chief? Both from an operational standpoint and then also the City Commission basically gets thrown into the middle of dozens and dozens of parking ticket situations. So, again, what we want to do is explain what we're about to start doing and then get some consensus from the City Commission. If you want us to start with sort of a hands-off approach and doing all the communications and then come back and let you know if we need to do enforcement, we can certainly do that. Or if you want to direct us that, no, we really think it's time to get serious and whatever reason you might have, and say, nope, start issuing tickets from day one, then we'll certainly do that. But this is not someplace, typically this is an administrative process, but this is not someplace I wanted the City Commission to get blindsided by what we were about to do and then not have the opportunity to provide some direction. So that being said, I'm going to shut down the monologue and ask Shannon to explain our new street sweeping operation.
So, first of all, I want to thank Sandy and Craig Hahn, street foreman. They put a lot of work into the schedule and the map. Of course, Erica helped us with the map, so thank you very much for that. This is what we had before. We had no maps on our city website, so Sandy, with her very creative manner of doing things, has come up with this schedule, delineating north side of Park Street, south side of Park Street with the map. We certainly intend to have this posted on the city website, Facebook page, newspaper, and look into the cost for getting it out in the mail in our utility bill as well. Now, as you notice the schedule, it's basically set up on a 2-week-a-month schedule. That helps the street department operationally to have that operator be able to do other functions in the city for the second 2 weeks of the month. Currently, the street department is working on 10-hour days, so when we look at the map, there's a lot to cover, but we can do that in a 10-hour day. We feel pretty comfortable. We can cover our routes in a 10-hour day. Now, operationally speaking, what I've noticed in my first year here is we go out pretty much every day, starting early May till the end of August, and we go out for about 5 hours a day and do the route that is on this sheet. For every car that's parked on the side of the street on that route for that particular day, we're losing on average about 30 feet of parking space that we cannot claim just to get in and around safely and not have anything. So, it's paramount that cars are moved to do an efficient operation. This really helps our air quality, our water quality, keeps our streets clean, appearance-wise, and there has to be, in order for us to do it efficiently, people have to move. That's basically the bottom line. So, in order to do that, our recommendation would be to get your opinion on enforcing the parking.
One of the things that we had talked about, Shannon, you correct me if I'm wrong, is that with the combination of internal efforts, a couple of different departments, that we will, at least in the beginning of this program and maybe throughout it for this first year, go out and do signage, advanced signage as we get there, so folks will know we'll be here tomorrow. And we'll set that signage out. And so in addition to how well we can get this word out, at least for a period of time, some temporary signage that says streets and moving their vehicles. So that will be part of what we do with this as well.
Now, another critical part, we only have one street sweeper for the city. Right now, it's currently being worked on. Unfortunately, Titan Machinery over in Four Corners has went out of business, and they did all the maintenance on the street sweepers in the area. So, we've taken it up to Ken's repair shop, did a full makeover right now. I'm very comfortable that we have it fully operational. Now, granted, there's not many pieces of equipment that you put that much wear and tear on. It's not the most opportune environment to be working under. I have explored options, and I'm going to continue to explore options if, I think it's important if we get everybody in the habit and we do consider parking enforcement, that we do have a plan B. I've asked in DT, they have one street sweeper for this area. It services Clyde Park, Wilsall, Livingston, Belgrade. Unfortunately, they do not have an alternative for us to use. And I've asked the city of Belgrade as well. They currently have 3 street sweepers. 2 of those are down right now. They're unable to help us out, but I'm still waiting on word back from them. So I will continue to look into what our plan B option is if ours does break down. And we will certainly get it up to the repair shop and get it fixed as quickly as possible, but we do have some constraints with just having one piece of equipment.
So are there questions from the commission?
Yeah, I have a question.
Commissioner Reddington?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You said it takes about 5 hours, or you run a street sweeper about 5 hours in a day?
In the past,
Uh-huh.
Commissioner Reddington, when we did a schedule where we basically swept the first and third, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We swept continuously every day of the month. We did
Okay.
it for about 5 hours. We're gonna take that and put it in a 10-hour day and do it in a 2-week period.
2-week period. I just want, yeah, it says beginning at 7 a.m. I'm just wondering, I've seen in the past or different places where street cleaning from 7 to 11 on Wednesdays or something like that. If there's a time, 7 a.m. to noon or something, not to be in the street, when people can start, putting their cars back there that aren't going to get ticketed, because I could see it was kind of obvious after the street sweeper goes through that it's been done, and pull your
Yes.
car in there, but I could see people trying to fight that, like, oh, I didn't know it didn't come out yet. So I think, beginning at 7 a.m., but it'd be nice to have a cutoff date, time also, to have where you
Certainly.
can come back there.
And, with where our street shop is, I can look into that and kind of tighten the schedule up a little
Right,
bit
and start
more.
at one section.
But obviously, we're gonna be starting from Bennett, so we'll go from east to west,
Right.
the first week, as we leave the shop, and then we'll go.
Start
hit the
working
north
away.
side and do that same thing.
Right.
And we do
So-
start the downtown at 5 in the morning. Right.
Downtown.
So we were supposed to start this week, but we didn't. Is that what you're saying?
It's currently being worked on. It can.
Okay,
Should be back
all right.
up, in
Because
a
I
couple
had
days.
5 people ask me in the past couple of days about this issue, and I said, well, we're going to talk about it. So it's good to know that that's why their streets aren't clean yet.
And,
Okay.
we have, it was out, about 3 weeks ago. We started an initial cleaning. I do know the streets are very dirty. We had a very big snow event winter, where we put a lot of sand and ice slicer on the road. So, we have been out and starting a lot of the cleanup on the north side of town. It did break down we were trying to do that on the south side.
Well, and another issue that people have talked to me about is that block between Park and Calendar is, zone commercial as well as residential. And because of that, a lot of people park in those areas that don't live there. So I think it's an issue for getting the street clean. So if someone goes into the library, for example, and parks, but parks maybe a street down or something, and then they're blocking the street sweeper, then the people that live there are actually at a disadvantage. So I'm not sure if we can deal with that in some way or another.
Commissioner Hoagland, I think that's one of the reasons that we want to try and do some of this signage out before the sweeper gets there. So that signage would go out typically the day before they get there, and so that folks would know, hopefully, before they pull in there, hey, the sweeper's going to be coming down this side of the street.
Yeah.
I don't need to park on this side. That would be, I think, that or if you get to the point where you just have to start issuing tickets. Because if it's the same vehicle doing it on a regular basis, it's interesting to me. I've ridden with the street sweeper a few times. First off, it's a great piece of equipment. It's a fun thing to be inside of. But it's also, if you want to know who parks where, the street sweeper can tell you who and what vehicles park where, and Ms. Payovitz can tell you who and what vehicles park where. If you ever need to know who they belong to or how they got there, they can tell you within 2 spaces of where that vehicle usually is found around town. So, yeah, he or she that's operating the street sweeper a couple weeks into the season has a pretty good idea of the repeat offenders.
And one other issue too that was brought up to me is if someone does block someone's business, for example, then you have to wait a whole month to get street cleaned, because if it's blocked, they get a ticket, but it's still not cleaned. So people were concerned with that. Some business owners in that zone between the two.
Well, there again, that's sort of the beauty of doing the 2-week schedule, because we will have some time. If we get a call in and we do a work order, we have
Okay.
the last 2 weeks of the month that we can go out and do some spot cleaning.
All right. I'll relay that to them.
What kind of a fine structure are you looking at?
Well, it would simply be, the structure is in code already.
So what's
The fee structure?
We just revised the fee structure.
Right.
okay? So it'd be just like a overdue parking space.
Like
$20
like a 2-hour violation, yes.
2 hour. Okay.
It won't be a 2-hour violation, but it would be very
It
similar
would be
in
that,
scope.
about that
Right.
cost.
In the parking?
In the ordinance, but there is an ordinance.
No. And then would require us to put it back in. Okay.
I believe.
Yeah, I think the commission's brought this up on a number of occasions through the years where we'll hear complaints by people, we'll bring it up, what can we do as far as keeping the streets clean, and, there's always kind of been the discussion where we haven't really had the enforcement portion of it down. So with the new structure that you have in the administration, we'll have the enforcement part of it, because that's the other half of doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I think we've got more ability to do the enforcement than we had in the past, when we're going to have to rely on the police department for more of that. The chief raises a good point. We'll need to go back and figure out if we need to add the street sweeper violation back in. And I guess, again, I didn't want the commission to be blindsided by this. I don't mean to draw the discussion out. I do want you to know that we're going to be changing how we do things a little bit. And certainly we'll follow any direction you want to give. I would recommend that we try it first and see how it goes, using our signage and doing some of the communication efforts before we start with the ticketing approach. And then we can do further research, and if we need to add that, we certainly can, and come back and ask the city commission, or perhaps warn the city commission that we're about to start using that method a little more aggressively, perhaps. Unless the city commission is just convinced that we should start writing tickets day one, I think that's the way I would recommend we proceed.
Since we're just discussing it, my thought would be, if we're going to implement this, first of all, this map is great.
Mm-hmm.
Reading what we had I tried to read it a couple weeks ago, and I'm going, well, they don't cover our street. I couldn't figure it out. But having a map like this color-coded on the website would be great, because I've gone on there many times when spring comes. I always go, okay, when are they going to come by? And a day later, I'm looking out the window, there goes the guy around one of our vehicles parked out there. So this map will help out greatly. We're going to get that on the website, I assume.
We'll get it in many different places.
Okay. And since we're discussing, my thought would be do the first month, and then after the first month, your next cycle out, start ticketing. That would be my thought. I don't know what anyone else thinks. I'm only one opinion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stern.
are you done?
I'm done.
So, quick question. So in the past, when this has been brought up, you specifically mentioned the police resources to do the ticketing was just too much of a burden on the police department. You just mentioned some other resources are available. What are those?
Well, we've added an additional person to our code enforcement division. Recently, we didn't add an additional person. We moved somebody from the finance department to code enforcement. So just to clarify, and so code enforcement would become another resource to bring to bear on this particular issue.
Right.
In the past, basically, a police car had to follow the street sweep.
Which is not a good use of resources.
In our opinion.
Yeah, in my opinion. The signs on the route the day before, we're talking like what we see over in Bozeman, right? Signs on a stick.
Right.
Big old white
Little
sign,
canister.
red. I bet those will be very, very effective. So who places those signs? Probably the same code enforcement people.
Well, we'll probably lean on code enforcement to help us with that. We'll probably also use public works and seasonals, and we'll work that out internally as to how we create our crew.
Obviously, it would be best if the signs worked perfectly and we didn't need to issue any tickets at all. I would prefer to err on the side of a soft takeoff, where it's more communication to begin with. And certainly you do got to ticket the. I would be in favor certainly of ticketing at some point after the communication started. I think those signs are a great idea, and that will go far. The exact duration until ticketing starts, whatever, use your best judgment. It sounds like a good plan, and I agree with Commissioner Bennett that this map is good. This is a good step forward. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Commissioner Reddington of Hoagland, do you have any, since we're giving the administration some direction on that, how do you guys want to approach, what's your thoughts on approaching? Because he'll take the consensus.
Yeah, well, I think too, just, communicating with people, the signage, and then, I don't know, like you said, maybe the next month, maybe start kind of cracking down on a little more. But I think easing into it and just getting people used to that, and I think that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we need to warn people pretty obviously that this is an expectation, this is how we're going to do it, and then like here's the bar, and then if they don't rise to it, then there's a consequence. But I think being very clear about the expectation and that this is something that we're doing as a city and for the community.
Can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
I live on a dead-end street, and I've had people come and complain about people's trailers or cars that have been parked there, not moved. They call the police department, try to get them to come out there and ticket it. This would be another way to deal with those people, and those vehicles have to be moved. It's not highly visible where we live, so most of the time it's not seen. So this would be a good way to kind of deal with that. It's kind of two birds with one stone. I think that's kind of great to keep that stuff moving along. In fact, I'm a fender too part of the time. My work trailer's out there, so it'll keep me on my toes also. But yeah, so I think it's great to get that going.
The street sweeper operator is a valuable resource for us. Obviously, they drive every street in town twice a month, and we pick up a lot of sign problems, things that we need to go make work orders for the public works department to go out and fix. So it's that's in addition to
that's
some
perfect.
of the abandoned vehicles, parked vehicles, stuff like
Right,
that
right.
we encounter.
So not to belabor this particular point, but what was the time frame? What's the season for street sweeping? If we wait too long, if you say, well, let's kind of keep this open-ended, we could get to the end of the season and not have any enforcement. What do we have, a 5-month period?
Typically we'll go from the 1st of May. We would have started yesterday, and we go till the end of August.
So May, June, July, August, 4 months. I say give them 2 months. If you give them 3 months, we might as well just give them the whole season. That's just my thought. I'm a meaning.
Well, and I certainly think we've heard at least a consensus from the commission. Make a big effort at educating and informing and awareness, and then start to move towards enforcement when it's obvious that we're not getting compliance through the normal methods. And so we'll adjust accordingly. And I certainly appreciate the commission's time to talk with us about this, because I just, again, didn't want anybody blindsided as things were beginning to change. And I think Shannon and Sandy and their group has come up with a good plan, so I'm looking forward to getting it started.
One last question on this map. On, in the downtown area, I noticed that there, I don't see any lines going north-south there. Second Street, Main Street, and B Street, between Park and Clark, it looks like.
I'll have to,
No, this one would have been put out Thursday. Okay.
Oh, okay.
We'll make sure that's the one we use.
And then the last question is, of course, Park Street is a state-maintained street, but they come through on a regular basis during the season with their street sweeper.
They come through. I can't tell you how regular it is.
they come through, and I give you my word, we keep a pretty close eye on at least from 3rd Street down to D Street area. We keep that pretty close. It doesn't take long on Park Street to fill our hopper up on the shoulder a bit, but we'll do our best.
Okay.
Obviously, the operator's not gonna go by and see an area of gravel and not turn on the sweep.
Mr. Neese, does that give you enough direction to
It
start?
certainly does, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, very welcome. It is 9 o'clock. We only have a couple other things left on our action items. Does anyone want to take a break? Or you want to just finish it off? Finish it off? Consensus, okay. Action item G, thank you very much, Shannon.
Yeah, thank you, Shane.
Discuss, approve, deny city water lift station easement on Livingston Healthcare property. Mr. Neese or Shannon.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Holmes to lead us in this discussion too. Basically, as the commission is aware, part of the utility development for the location of the new hospital campus is their installation of water and sewer lines to the locations we were discussing earlier, and that includes a new lift station. And so the easement that you have in front of you would accommodate that and provide the city access to that lift station and continuous maintenance and operation.
So, actually, the lift station, we approved here a couple meetings ago. So, this parcel land of lift station. This is a 20-foot easement that, for the public water system for the hospital. The sewer system from the hospital will be private from the hospital facility to the lift station. This is a 20-foot easement, so this covers the fire hydrants that'll be in the parking lots. And this also extends to the south property line. So at some point, when we need to move the system or connect to a storage reservoir or a well or something of that nature, we do have a 20-foot easement from the north property line to the south property line. If you look on the exhibit, the water system for the hospital facility is going to end right at this location. The water main will come down and then it'll tee over here to a fire hydrant and terminate here. This gives us.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve action item G.
Maybe there's a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Stern, second by Hoagland. Commission discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stern.
are there any issues with this? No issues, right? This is, I don't know. Any issues been brought up with respect to this particular easement?
Not at all. No, this is something that actually Jim and I and Tom Schweiger have worked on. Very similar to the Fleshman Creek project, Park County Fairgrounds, sewer extension. We took a lot of the same verbiage and put this. The important thing on this easement was that we wanted to go ahead and get to the south property line with this document. That it would.
In the hospital's okay with this?
Yes.
And you said their sewer line is private. So if anything goes wrong, they gotta take care of it. Sounds good. Great, thanks.
very much. Further discussion? Roll call.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern,
Motion passes. Action item H. Discuss, approve, deny scope of work for a third-party engineering evaluation of underpass and overpass scenarios.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
at the direction of the city commission, the administration contacted 3 different engineering firms. Staley Engineering, our city engineering firm, as well as Sanderson Stewart out of Bozeman, and HDR Engineering, who has locations in several spots across the state as well. We asked them to provide us a cost and time estimate according to a standard scope of work. So we used the same scope of work for each one of them and asked them to respond to that. Of the three firms, only one of those firms provided a time and cost estimate. That is Staley. They're actually under contract, so they have to do that. So at this time, I have one estimate to complete a third-party engineering review, and that total is a range basically from roughly $9,000 to $11,000 to complete that work, 4 to 6 weeks based on the length of time required of each one of these factors. I would imagine that the cost that is projected here would be borne from the special tax levy funds, right, which we right now have a balance of about $380,000 in that account.
All right, so commission discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Stern?
can we discuss without a motion?
Yes.
So what's the issue with Sanderson Stewart? What was their conflict?
I'm not going to take up just speaking for them in detail. I think if I understand their letter and then a subsequent phone conversation that I had with Mr. Mitchell, they had, I think Mr. Denton approached them and discussed the project with them prior to my contact, and they felt uncomfortable accepting the work because of that.
So my take on this, there's 2 things, 2 elements. One is that $10,000 is a lot of money. It's nice it doesn't come out of the general fund. If it came out of the general fund, that would be a deal breaker. At least it has its own specific fund that's only used for the grade separated rail crossing. Still, $10,000 is a lot of money. It comes from difficult to raise taxes from a levy. The second item is that there might be a need for the community to be secure that this is the correct plan. I think technical merits of an underpass outweigh an overpass, but my opinion isn't necessarily as important as an official engineering study. And at some point, the community is going to have to kick in through some resources, some more resources to make this happen. And so in order to make that happen, the community has to be confident that we do have the right plan. So I put those 2 together. I mean, it would be very nice to have this study. $10,000 is a lot of money. So that leads me to the question, do we need the study right now? We could almost do it at a later date when it's closer. That's how I feel about it. I don't know how if we had to take a vote right now, I don't think I could tell you right now what it would be. Those are my concerns, and that's how I view it. So I'll yield the floor and hear what the other commissioners have to say, in the public for that.
And I agree. When I read this, I'd say I was opposed to it, to spending the money to evaluate this, then start kind of thinking about it more. And I agree to kind of weigh it out. People have that information. We make a smart decision on it, whichever way it goes. It's kind of been out there in the public. And I think people would feel like they got a fair shake, either whatever side you're on. So although I started out kind of opposed to it, kind of entertaining that it might be a good idea. It's, like Adam said, it's a lot of money up front, but maybe in the long run that it'd be worth that money to make sure that it's both sides are heard and come up with the best decisions possible. Yeah, as far as making a decision now, I'd actually probably lean towards moving forward with having that third party. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reddington. Commissioner Hoagland?
Yeah, it's a tough one. The initial cost definitely made me think against it, as the two other commissioners are saying, but I feel like I'm unsure if, have we not had enough information in the past to have a concrete answer? And would this be just revisiting what we already know? And that's where I'm unsure, just because I feel like my information that I have isn't enough to even make this decision, because we've had years in the making and haven't come up to a solid answer yet. To see where I am on it, I feel frustrated that we're even being asked to spend $10,000, $11,000 on one hand, but then I also understand the frustration and potential for making the wrong decision. I just feel like we need to really go into this very thoughtfully and put all our information together before we make even this decision, because it's been a long process, and I believe that we need to make the right decision in the long run, and we need to make the decision. We need to move forward with it. So I'm still like, tonight I don't feel like I can make that decision to say yes, for sure, let's go with a third party. But I want to consider it by putting it together with the other information that we have.
Any other thoughts on that?
I want to hear your thoughts.
Oh. Well, my thoughts, particularly in this subject, always from the beginning were costs. I know that well, first of all, if we look back at it, the community has requested that we have an underpass or overpass or some type of crossing there. That doesn't have not a grade crossing. So I know probably a number of years ago they must have done a study for overpass and underpass and weighed the pros and cons and costs. I guess my concern is when I heard Mr. Denton's proposal, the thought of having something that costs less was attractive, because we weren't getting any money to do the underpass anyway. So if we're never going to get the money for the underpass through the process we're getting, why not take a look at something that potentially could cost less? Besides that issue, personally, after seeing what Dal had presented about how the underpass would interact with the existing streets, properties, and landscape, I got very concerned about two things in particular. So the funds, not having the funds ever was one. Not having the funds from the federal government coming was one problem, even though we put in for another Tiger grant, which I'm hopeful for. Two was the taking of the properties, adjacent properties. I'm always concerned about taking someone's property, especially when they are unaware of that this process is coming down, except for in the last several months we've discovered that. And I'm also very concerned about the road, the steep road that, what is that road? always in this process, the idea is that we're trying to enhance our emergency services to the north side in case the railroad is blocked or the B Street crossing is blocked for some reason because of traffic. So if you spend $10 million to correct that problem and then you eliminate half of the population by eliminating a road, to me, you really haven't really solved that problem. You've fixed one problem and created another one. So I've seen that that road would be abandoned in this particular plan is problematic for me. The only reason I would be in favor of voting for a third party would to really evaluate, is this really going to cost less, and can we rectify two of these problems, which I see are problems, abandoning the road, which is a major problem in my mind, and the taking of private property. If the cost, the leaving of the road, and the not taking of someone's personal property can be eliminated from this whole process, I think that's worth the $10,000, $11,000, in my opinion. So those are my thoughts on it. I think if we can wait certainly to put this aside and make a decision later, but if we wait, the process is going to continue with the engineering company. They're going to be moving forward on the underpass and spending time and resources from the $380,000 we already have. So, you know, I'd like to hear the commission's opinion whether they think that this other proposal would solve those three problems. Or if you think that the present proposal, the underpass, you know, those three problems can be rectified. Because to me, those are the real key issues in my mind as a commissioner. Solving the emergency safety, we're losing that road, so we're getting over there, but now we got to go way around to get to those houses up on that north side of the hill. Second, we're going to take some personal property. And then third, you know, we still haven't got the funds after how many years have we been involved in this process? About 6 years, 7 years?
7 years to date, yes, sir.
7 years to date, and each year we put in a Tiger grant?
We put in Tiger grants over the, several Tiger grants over basically the last 3 years since they changed the program. I think
Okay.
it's the last 3 years.
Okay. But we've been looking for funds ever since we had the mill levy.
Correct.
Yeah. So we've been looking for the funds. They haven't been appearing. And, you know, there's hope, but I don't know if hope's a plan.
Right.
You know, we can hope that, you know, someone in Washington will turn their attention or turn their head our way to give us some money for this project, but I don't want to base our decisions on that line of thinking. So those are my concerns. If this other proposal had never surfaced, you know, some of these other issues we would have had to solve in my mind, especially the road. Anyway, but the idea that possibly there's a cheaper way to do it, and we can not take someone's property, and that we can leave that road in there to access that north side of the hill, those are positives in my mind that you know, outweigh the $10,000. So that's my thought. If we wait, we're going to keep moving forward, and when's the best time to address it? I'm not sure.
Well, is the $10,000 going to redesign the road if it's an underpass, though? You know, I don't know if there's a correlation. You know, the road issue needs to be addressed. I agree, but I think that could be done within the design plan of the underpass or the overpass, but I don't think that should be tied to this $10,000, because I think we'll deal with that because it is important to deal with.
So,
like you're
Mr.
saying.
Chair, Commissioner Hoagland, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Could I? With regard to the issue of Sunrise Drive, I have asked Dow HKM to prepare a brief, review of the Sunrise Drive issue. Basically, is there a way, in their opinion, to keep that road in place and have it function with the underpass scenario? They've prepared a draft of that. I've reviewed it. They sent it back with some questions and some different things, and I expect to get a final copy shortly. The basic quick on that was their answer was no. But as soon as I get a final copy, I'll make sure that the City Commission gets that document. So I just wanted you to know, I mean, I went back and try and hit the drawing board again on that particular piece of those issues that you identified. I do think, though, to Commissioner Hoagland's point, one of the things that the independent engineer is going to have to consider is whether a part of Mr. Denton's proposal to save that road is valid from an engineering standpoint. That's going to be part of what that is going to be part of what they're going to consider. I think what we saw with the Dow presentation is that their answer is going to be that if it's built to design specifications, the overpass is going to preclude the ability to keep that road open. It doesn't under Mr. Denton's current proposal. The argument from the administration being his proposal is not to design standards. So this independent engineer is going to have to evaluate that as part of looking at all that Mr. Denton has brought to the table.
Mike Gomez, 611 North D Street. We just put a basketball nets up on D Street Park. How much does those cost?
How much did the basketball facility cost?
Yeah.
Right around 12, was it? And we got the goals, the concrete, everything about
We
the
paid $12,000 for basketball nets in the park that hardly anybody uses. Glass fronts, one of the glasses already broken.
vandals.
These were set too close together to take that forward.
No.
And so we're talking $10,000 for study. Just my thoughts.
Are you saying it's a waste of time to spend the $10,000?
No,
or
I'm
you think
saying
it's
it's
a-
already, there's too much money to pay $12,000.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
We'll put a perspective.
Oh, okay, so I see, okay. All right,
That's
thank
a
you.
year's wages for me, $12,000.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
certainly this is totally the City Commission's prerogative, and there's not any reason for me to revisit where the administration stands with this. I don't think it's necessary for us to be put in this position because as much as I respect Mr. Denton as a person, I don't think his current proposal is to engineering standards, and therefore his cost and everything else, we're not making an apple-to-apple comparison. I do think that, though, the problem that has been created is that because of this non-apples-to-apples comparison, we have in our community now a sort of a division that I don't think is healthy going forward with regard to this project. And I also think it's going to make it very difficult for the administration and MDT to negotiate for right-of-way and other types of things with some of the expected property owners, as long as they have it in their mind that we're doing something and there's a way that we could do it better, cheaper, and different, and it wouldn't affect them. So while I don't think we ought to be in a position of having to spend this $10,000, I don't really think we have a choice. I think we have to spend the $10,000 and put the issue to bed one way or the other and move forward. For the purpose of the community, the purpose of the folks that live in that neighborhood. And when we go to negotiate with these property owners, I honestly need to be able to sit across the table from folks and say, this is a project. This is the project. That's not an option. We've taken that off the table because I believe that's what this is going to say. And if I'm wrong, everybody can remind me I was wrong. They usually do. And so I can do that. Otherwise, without this piece, and the longer we wait, I think it just complicates things. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I agree. I think that's, it seems like a lot at the beginning, but like I said, that I think in the long run, it'll pay for itself. That everybody felt like they got a fair shake and we made the best decision. And I think people, because that's the biggest thing I hear about is, the overpass, underpass. And a lot of, old friends I have, are just animate, like overpass. It's like, well, there's pros and cons of both of them. And, but I think having this third party will kind of ease those people, instead of thinking like, okay, I'm arguing this way for a personal reason. It's like, all right, we've got X, Y, and Z in front of us. We're going to make the best decision. And that'll kind of, I think, help people, move on with what needs to be done. So I think, and that's like I said at the beginning, I just, pumped the brakes and like, that's a lot of money, no way. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, that might be money well spent, so I agree. I think that's, it's kind of.
We could spend this money and be right back in the same spot. And that's a good possibility. We could spend this money, they do the work, they're going to say, well, the underpass is the only way to do this, and it's going to be cheaper, and we'll be back in the same spot. But we'll still need to be back in the same spot of rectifying the road and the property as well.
Mr. Chair, I think, though, just at that point, if designed as it will have to be designed, Mr. Denton's proposal is going to require takings as well.
You think
I am absolutely convinced. If you look at what Dow presented, Mr. Denton's proposal takes basically the same building.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying we will be in the same spot.
Yeah.
I think either way we go, once we get to design standards.
And we'll be in the same spot of still looking for funds in order to build an underpass.
Correct.
And which kind of takes me back to the original. I know that we're getting late, and I don't want to philosophize about the original intent. I'm wondering how valid this point is that we have to have another crossing there. If can't emergency vehicles, can't they get through B Street just about every single time? How many times do they have to halt there?
Well,
because right now, that's what they have to do. If they have to get over there in an emergency, they have to go under B Street if the railroad's crossing there. I know this is probably a moot point that's all been talked about before, but when I think about it, how many times have they been slowed down because of B Street?
Do you want to talk about that, Chief?
I think the emergency crossing is one component of this. I honestly can't remember one time in 25 years that we could not get to the north side period. We were sitting there while something was happening, dead in water, so to speak. But the potential is there. I mean, underpass has been flooded numerous times every year where we cannot get vehicles through there, period. So if Fifth Street was blocked and the east end crossing was blocked, which do happen fairly frequently, we would be in that situation. So it's very feasible, even though I cannot remember it happening. It may have, but I cannot personally remember it happening. It's a very real possibility. But the other component is just public travel. I can tell you, living on the north side of the tracks, trying to come to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and go home at 5 as well as any other time throughout the day, there's times where it's gridlock travel. In an emergency vehicle, you could turn on the lights and sirens and plow your way through B Street and force cars to, get away where you normally wouldn't be able to do that. And it happens all the time where traffic is gridlocked. Kids are late getting to school, people are late getting to work, because you're stuck on the north side for 20 minutes fairly frequently. So I think it's important for the public to have another access. I think the majority, studies have shown that the majority of the people on the north side of the hill, or a high percentage of them, would use that new crossing normally every day. Traffic to take a lot of pressure off B Street, a lot of pressure off Fifth Street, and direct it that way, because I've seen people work in Bozeman, out that way they go. They, on that end of town, they would use that to come back into Livingston to work, to go to school, to be more convenient, and they would know they're guaranteed to get through there. So I think it'd just prevent a lot of problems we have every day on the north side of town, and a lot of gridlock. As development increases, it's going to increase in that area. Right now, the Star Edition is already starting to develop out there, building houses out there, that's starting to take off. So the potential for growth is real. There's going to be more people on that end of town that would potentially use that. It's going to create more and more traffic problems at Fifth Street. And it's, from my point of view, from emergency services, attention need, and just to enhance public travel, that's not something we need to press forward.
I agree with the public access. That's, me, in my mind, that's the greatest need. But are we willing to spend $10.5 million for that need? It's always been, safety and human health. But like you say, that north side, people funneling out that way would be great. But what kind of hindrance would some of those people see if we abandon Sunrise Drive?
So just to go towards that point a little bit, Mr. Chair, and with what the chief was saying. So, when we did the original feasibility study, we updated all of the city's traffic modeling. And with the underpass, the Fifth Street crossing is rated as a C on a scale of A, B, C, D, F by year 2020 with the underpass. Without the underpass, I don't know that it goes to failing, but I think it's a D. And when you get to the level of a D or F on your traffic study, and you're talking about you're basically have an intersection which is not effectively moving traffic. That study, those models were done before we had the increased train traffic that we've seen in the last 3 to 4 years. So towards your point, part of this conversation has been about public safety, but part of this conversation from day one has always been about moving people in the most efficient way. And without this undercrossing or some overpass or some other location of a crossing, then we have a situation at Fifth Street from a transportation standpoint that we have to address anyways, as an alternate route. So back to your original question, I don't know, because of the combination of factors that we're trying to address, that we really have an option. Sure, we can look at other sites. Sure, we can say, is it an overpass or an underpass? But I think from a going forward standpoint, based on development, based on traffic patterns that we know are there, we have to do something. And so I think I'm pretty confident in the last 8 years we've moved past we don't need to do anything, this would be a nice have to, that we've got to do something.
Thank you. Always nice to revisit that and make
Absolutely.
sure our thinking is accurate in what we're looking for. But Chief, to talk about that traffic flow from the north side, would abandoning Sunshine Drive be a hindrance to that? I think it seems like it would.
I'm not as concerned about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of things we could do in the future, as far as constructing new roads someplace up there. I think the majority of the traffic right now goes east on Montana Street, out that way right now, to the half.
Right.
They're going to Fifth Street. That's where the flow of traffic already is. The handful of people that probably live right on the end, I'm sure take Sunrise maybe a little bit quicker, but I think right now they still move with walking. I don't think it'll be a major concern. I think there's other options. I don't think that's worth making or breaking this overpass deal. If the engineering report says we need to close that, I don't think it's a let's go back to square one personally. I think we need to press on with this thing. Moving forward with that and plow forward the best we can and rely on engineers and boards and people know more.
Sure. Well, what do you guys think?
I think it's, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I do
Commissioner
think
Smith.
it's important to have the confidence of the community when going forward with a major public work like this. At some point, we're gonna ask the community for more money, and that would be problematic. I don't know that it's time critical, but if we do have the report, it will, we can always point to it. So you said we go through the report, we're back at the same place, but we're back at the same place with additional information and the added confidence of the community. So to that point, I would agree with a lot of what you said. And then a lot of the issues that you did mention, James, are in the scope of work here. The roadway design, the right-of-way, and what was that one, and the cost. And in fact, that's the main part of the work, I think. So if you want to go forward with it, I'll support that. I yield.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Hoagland.
I think after hearing a lot of different opinions on it, and I like what John said too, just the trust, I guess Adam said that as well, makes me more confident in spending that money in that way, because I think it is important to listen to the masses and get the opinions from many versus a few. And I think this would help to move the project forward in people's minds as well, and give us a better starting point for the future, I guess.
So are you, is someone making a motion, or do you still reluctant?
I'd make a motion.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve third-party engineer to evaluate this underpass overpass star.
Motion by Reddington.
I'll
Is there a
second.
Second by Hoagland. Further discussion? Slightly off this subject, but on this subject still. If we get through this, find that, we're still, the best solution is an underpass for us. What other options can we think of as far as financing the underpass? Because I'm not that hopeful with federal funding.
So, Mr. Chair, I know that is one of the items that was basically put on the city manager's objectives for the next year, to develop several alternatives for the city commission to consider about how we might finance that, and take a look at if there's a way to create more incentive at different levels and add more local dollars and get the thing done. And so we'll do that. I would hesitate to go too far down that road tonight, because I could only talk in concept.
Okay.
But certainly those are things that the commission's asked for.
process.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Okay, we have any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddington,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
Motion passes. City manager comments.
Mr. Chair, just two real quick. Number one, kudos to the Public Works Department on the first week of spring cleanup. That seems to be going very well, and they're taking a lot of stuff away. And you're done already? We're done. So I don't know that we've ever got it done. So double kudos to Public Works.
All right.
In that sense. And he's not with us tonight, but I would just make mention one more time. Tomorrow is the 7th of May. It will probably be the last day that Interim Chief Jacobson actually comes to work. He'll be expending vacation time between now and July 4th, and then on July 4th, retiring from the fire service and from the city of Livingston. And I just would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Jeremy in a very public way, he has done a tremendous job, not just keeping things afloat in between Chief Shonin and a new fire chief, but actually I think moving the department forward in relationship to how we're working with our reserve components and some of our other training issues. And so I just wanted to say thank you to him again. He had, I think, probably the most difficult task I've seen in the last 8 years in the fire department. Knowing that he was an interim, knowing that he was headed towards retirement, and yet did some great things for us. And so I just want to say again, thank you to Chief Jacobson for what he's given to the department, not just in the last several months, but over the last 20 plus years in terms of his career. And we'll make him come back and stand up and get embarrassed and shake our hands and everything before the official retirement. But just recognizing that today is probably his last day on site at work. And then in the meantime, Captain Harrington will serve as our acting interim chief. We're running out of titles. So thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Great. Mr. Stern?
Thank you. Try to be brief. A final comment about the proposed annexation and potential truck stop development out there. This kind of development out there has often been talked about and been talked about for a long time. That's actually not an issue at all, and it'll be good for Livingston. And if the company is willing to partner well with the community, it'll be great for Livingston. The potential issue, as well as the potential opportunity, is the development that will occur between Livingston and that and that area that's going to be annexed. And it's incumbent upon the community to do good planning to make sure that the development occurs consistent with our community and it preserves the character of our community. If we don't plan for change, we'll get change we don't want, and there's the potential issue of getting change that is inconsistent with the character of Livingston. But if we do a good job and we work with the developers out there and we do some good long-term planning, trails and recreation and the business and the zoning, then we can ensure that that area is an asset to the community instead of something else. So that's the issue. It's the development between the city and the potential truck stop, not the truck stop itself. And that issue won't be solved in the near term. That'll be solved through a lot of hard work over a long period of time as we work through the growth policy and the annexation policy and with the work on the Parks and Trails Committee and that sort of stuff. So that's my final comment on the truck stop. We do have a city-county meeting tomorrow at 9:30. We had a Parks and Trails meeting a week or two ago. That was quite productive. We did bring up there's some issues with the basketball courts on the North M Street Park, and so we're going to address that at the meeting. Commissioner Hoagland was at the meeting as well. Bree brought up the fact that the backboards have been vandalized, which is unfortunate, and the administration may want to hold off on repairing those until we've had a discussion and make some recommendations to them. So the committee makes some recommendations to the commission, and perhaps we'll extend the discussion to vandalism-proof backboards or something. So that was a bit of a bummer to hear that they've been vandalized. Discussions of the membership and of the committee and have been postponed to this coming meeting. I sent some information out about that. Ed sent some information back to me, which I forwarded the members of the committee. But we did already appoint Mike, and I don't know if he's on now or not, but in fact, I consider Mike part of the Parks and Trails Committee, and so we'll do what we can to tighten that up. Also, at the next Parks and Trails Committee meeting, we're going to discuss the priorities for the coming year for the Parks and Trails Committee, and then those priorities would get sent as a recommendation to the commission to then provide direction to the administration for the Parks and Trail system for the coming year. So that should be a lively discussion. One last comment and then a quick question. On our city-county budget committee, we talked about that we appointed you to communication at that executive level between these two organizations and these two types of organizations is always a good thing, whether or not you agree or disagree. If you know each other face to face and you can understand each other's
issues, it goes so far to helping resolve issues and making the process work smoothly. And the operations work smoothly as well. So I think that committee is a good thing, and I commend you guys for being on it. And the last question is for the city manager. Is there an update with our new fire chief? When can we expect him to begin?
The update is that they had a very good visit. We had opportunity to do a lot of good things with Mark, and he interacted with the union one-on-one and with the department one-on-one with myself and members of the leadership team. They are now back in New Hampshire, crunching the final numbers, so to speak, in terms from a family perspective. I know there was some business trips that had to be taken, and so I expect that we're going to finish those conversations probably later this week, or early part of next week, and have those details available.
Good. I was very impressed with the candidate's interview and consider him a very strong candidate, and hopefully we can get them here. They'll be a good asset to our community.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Stern. Commissioner Reddington?
I'm good.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you very much. Commissioner Vogelen?
I just have a question, actually, and one of the two of you will most likely know the answer. We had talked about having a commissioner or a county commissioner over at the senior center for time. Did we ever address that further we were kind of stopped,
So,
talking about it online because we were trying to email a few questions, and then we said we better talk about it during a commission meeting, and that's the last I've heard anyone.
So I provided what I did is ask the commission if they had a preference for times of day to be able to do that. Ms. Cottengim took that information and was processing it. I haven't heard anything back from her with regard to if she's established a set date and time. I know their preference was for a morning session because they have so many other things around their lunchtime meals. It's pretty chaotic from a noise standpoint, but then we got the limited response that we got was more indicative that the commission could participate easier at a lunch session. So Ms. Cottengim and I have been talking about some other things recently that hasn't been on her list. I'll certainly ask her again if she's made any firm decisions on that. We didn't initiate it. The senior center initiated it, so it's really not our decision to make. It's up to them how they want to do that. But I'll contact Ms. Cottengim and see if she's got a decision.
You want to put that on as an action discussion item next meeting? So that's a good reminder to keep that ball rolling.
I tell you what, I'll talk to her tomorrow.
Okay.
And if I feel like that there's more work that we need to do, then we'll certainly put it on as an action
Okay.
item.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
You done? Okay. First of all, thank you for putting together the next round of Tiger Grants. I'm hopeful that it's our turn to win the Monopoly game on that one. That will solve that debate. Also, I got a letter in my inbox at the commission regarding a proclamation for the Elks. And did they send this to you?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, they've been designated May 1st to 7th as Youth Week. How do we get something? Could I just ask you to put it on for the next commission meeting as a proclamation?
Yeah.
I'll just pass that to you. That one. Oh, one thing I've noticed is that Commissioner Reddington and myself have missed both of the last two transportation meetings. We haven't been updating the list of dates here for commission meetings on our calendar of events. I'm wondering if we can get those meetings on here, on the calendar events, or at least on the city calendar as well, because they haven't been showing up there. So
Okay.
even though it's a specific Wednesday of every month. It's nice to have a date on that too. And let's do this list here. Everything else we've gone over already. All right, thank you very much. So that's the end of my comments. Public comments.
Hello, everybody. Commissioners Hoagland and Stern. My name is Mark Bond. I presented at the last City Commission meeting. I'm representing a group called the Yellowstone Asia Initiative, and I'll keep this as brief as I can because I realize we're not on the agenda. But I just wanted to kind of briefly recap and report on what we've been doing. We made a lot of great progress. We've secured a second location for our Chinese art show that we're planning. We're going to be using the gallery in the Lincoln School, which is great because it's a block away from the Shane Center. Really ideal in that way. We've also made a lot of great headway in regards to the mural. Commissioner Reddington and Mr. Meese, the city manager, have been very helpful in helping us secure the wall behind the Civic Center, that white wall that faces the band shell, as a potential kind of public mural area. I also met with Rob Bankston this last week, and he recommended reaching out to Tyler, I don't know his last name, but the guy that owns the American Bank. He has access to that large white wall on the north wall of the sushi restaurant. Apparently he's interested in putting up a mural there as well, so making headway on that. In regards to why I wanted to speak tonight is at the last commissioners meeting, Commissioner Bennett, Reddington, and Friedman voted to sign a letter of support for the art show, and I was wondering if it was at all possible that we could get that signed in the near future. Our partners in China are very interested in getting that letter so they could use it for their advertising purposes. So they've been keen on requesting that, and I'd like to humbly request that you guys could sign that tonight if possible, if not in the next couple of days.
We'll have a vote on that, right? You need to pass this, or
No.
we just need the signature?
You just need the signatures. Yeah, you voted on what you wanted to do. So if you'll hang on tonight, we'll just give this to you.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
You guys could just forge Mel's signature. You won't mind.
Well, that's all I have, so thank you for your time.
Thanks. Good job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
I have to say, I wasn't here at that meeting, but I'm really excited about this project. I'm part of the arts. My whole history, I've been part of the arts in one form or the other, and I'm extremely excited about the concept, about the potential for just sharing cultures. I think it's going to be great.
Awesome. Yeah, we're really excited as well. We're really excited to try and find as many ways to include the Lincoln Center community as possible in the event and just make it as much of a collaboration between like kind of the East meets West theme as possible. So yeah,
Great.
Definitely keep you guys appraised of this new kind of neat headstone in the future. We'll get on the agenda for next week as well. So maybe give you guys a couple minutes and kind of a more precise kind of where we're at. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Appreciate it. Additional public comment? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm Carol Lucy with the Livingston Park County Tennis Association, and I just want to update you a little bit more for the change order explanation. What's down there right now is the 4 inches of asphalt, and it's curing up for like, I think it takes 3 weeks before you can do anything with that. And then they will put the acrylic, I think it's acrylic layer that goes on the top, and then that has to cure up and dry probably for another couple of weeks, and then you've got lines and whatnot. But next week, the fence should go up, so the orange protective tape will be brought down. So, because they are working, K&M is working over in Belgrade also. They have like 5 tennis courts being built over there. So they're going to start a Class A program, which is, I think, that's good to hear. And so I just want to update, so probably not till June that the courts will be open for public, playing, and we, want to have a little bit of a celebration and get the date and the time, and you guys can all come down and help us celebrate, and maybe even grab a racket and get a ball in it. So, one other comment on the study that you're talking about for the engineering. I think you probably know that when this is written, that you need to write it and get all your questions answered. You know, write up the request for the study so that, like, all the concerns that you have about the road. And I've lived, my family and I have lived on the north side of the tracks for 50 years. And believe me, in the last couple, 3 years, it is just amazing, the traffic that has, you know, we have never, and I just can't seem to plan enough time to get down there on time. My kids on bikes, safety things, waiting for these trains to go for, you know, 20, 30 minutes, no, maybe not that long. That kind of worries me, to see kids going to school and waiting for the train to come by. So we need to get on it. That you guys had the right idea. You know, we've waited enough time for this. So that's all I have to say, and thank you. So
Very much.
for the city is really, and thank you for your compliments to the
Thank you very much.
Tennis Association. We're going on to the middle school. We should get those finished, those courts be done by before fall. So then next summer or fall, we should be back on the court part. So hopefully that'll work like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional public comment? Any other public comment? Last call for public comment. Seeing none, I entertain a motion for adjournment. So moved. Is there a second?
A second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. This meeting of the Livingston Commission is adjourned at 9:50.
Oh, I've been waiting for this.
All
I'm gonna
right.
read it tonight.
Yeah. Burn the midnight oil on this one, Shannon. Thank you.
No fun novels for me anymore.
Pretty proud on the.
That's why I was going to give us a break an hour ago. No one thought that we were going to go for another hour. I know.